Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rule of Order will be used to conduct meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be sure they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruptions of the meeting. Right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, then have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll take just a moment for a moment of silence. All right, Dr. Felder.
Why, good evening, Chair Atherton, Vice Chair Purcell, the entire board, our students, staff, and families. This evening, we have some very special recognitions, 10 to be exact. And so let the recognizing begin. Next slide, please. So we say, in part, that our mission here in Orange County Schools is to educate children in a safe, inclusive environment. Well, to us, this means we provide an environment that is appropriate at all times for teaching, for learning, growing, playing, and working. Our custodians are hard at work early in the morning and late at night and well into the evening to keep all classrooms, offices, and facilities sanitized, safe, clean, and orderly every day. So every day we come to school and work, our custodians have done a great job in ensuring that we have an environment that's safe and inclusive. And so we want to celebrate them today because on October 2nd, it was National Custodians Day. And so what you see displayed on this slide are actually photos from our social media. You will see here these pictures include custodians from Hillsborough Elementary, New Hope Elementary, and a very special message of thanks in the middle from Central Elementary School. So our custodians were certainly celebrated on October 2nd. So thank you to all of our custodians for making sure our buildings are great places to learn and work every day. And so, next slide, please. Well, pictured here are the Bookopoly Summer Reading Challenge Grand Prize winners and their school principals. So we will announce each winner and the titles of their favorite books from their summer reading adventures. So pictured from left to right are Ben Yatis and Mr. Tony Witter from River Park. In case you're wondering, Ben's favorite book was The Big Nate. He won a prize pack from the Carolina Hurricanes. Kelly Thomas and Mr. Chris Marks from Grady A. Brown Elementary School. And so Kaylee enjoyed the Classic Babysitters Club book collection, and she won a generous gift card to Barnes & Noble. Tana Trickett and Mrs. Lynn Brown from Pathways Elementary. So they're the next ones pictured there. And so Tanner's favorite book was the ever popular Captain Underpants. If you haven't read it, you want to read that series. So Tanner also won a Barnes & Noble's gift card. And then there's Amelia Santiago and Miss Jamie Bell Williams from Orange Mill. Amelia thoroughly enjoyed Where the Red Fern Grows. Amelia won a Bluetooth speaker from Club Wyndham. And last but not least, we have Perla Francisco with Mr. Witter from River Park Elementary, and her favorite books were the Dark Diary series. And then just in case you know where she can get book 6 of the series, she's looking for that book. And so Perla also won a Bluetooth speaker from Club Wyndham. So congratulations to all of our Summer Reading Challenge grand prize winners. Every student who participated won a prize, but these were our grand prize winners. And at this time, here she comes. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Ambra Wilson, our Executive Director of Literacy, to share some additional remarks.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. Thank you, Dr. Felder, for sharing the names and the school and the favorite books of our grand prize winners from Bookopoly Summer Reading Challenge. As you guys know, this was the first summer that we've had a district-wide summer reading initiative, and Bookopoly was very popular. We heard lots of chatter throughout Summer Scholars and Read to Achieve Camp. And we did have lots of students who participated. So I am pleased to share with you that here in OCS, our students read over 1,924 books this summer. Wow. And the reason I don't know the exact specific number is because every Bookopoly board did not come back to me necessarily. Some of our lit coaches got tons of them. They had different record keeping systems. So I counted and tallied all the ones that I had in my possession. But please know that I believe that number is actually probably closer to about 2,500 books. So I think that is something to celebrate for sure. We did have higher participation at our elementary schools than our middle schools, but I am happy to say that every middle school had students who participated. And that is something that we want to look at as we begin planning more for this summer. And we've already started soliciting feedback and advice from our middle school students as to how we can get them engaged with us this next summer, as this is the first year we've had a summer reading challenge, but it will not be the last. So thank you again for your support, and definitely we're appreciative to Club Wyndham and to Barnes & Noble and to the Carolina Hurricanes for their support and sponsorship of our grand prize winners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Wilson. All right, more to celebrate in Orange County Schools. So today is Indigenous Peoples Day. Indigenous Peoples Day honors the histories, cultures, and perspectives of Indigenous peoples and their ancestors who lived on the land now known as North America. They existed in these areas thousands of years before the first European explorers arrived. This day recognizes the legacy and impact of colonialism on Native communities in the United States, and it also celebrates the cultures, contributions, and resilience of contemporary Native peoples. I understand we have a board member who would also like to speak to this special day.
Thank you, Dr. Felder and Will. I appreciate our recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day, and I want us to continue to recognize in our work that Orange County Schools was established on land previously settled by the ancestors of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. Our board benefited these past couple years in particular from training and conversation with Indigenous community members and educators. Last year at this time, we had the privilege of distinguished guests, members and leaders of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation, attending our board meeting as we shared and approved a resolution honoring Indigenous Peoples Day. And there's a lot of history captured in that resolution that was written with support of some of those individuals. Some of the history of the ancestors captured in the resolution includes the fact that between 2 and 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas over several hundred years, that forced boarding of Native children in residential schools continued in this country long into the 20th century, that education, movement, marriage, and voting for Native peoples were restricted and controlled until civil rights legislation of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and that, from our resolution quoting, for centuries before and for decades since school integration, the stories of Native peoples have been inaccurately and often disrespectfully told by educators, authors, and publishers even today. We were charged by our coaches in the Indigenous community that, quote, the path to academic success for Indigenous students, as for all students, requires a school setting that fosters a healthy sense of identity, communicating that they are valued and capable, and not one that inflicts harm by inaccurate and racist curriculum, literature, and practices. We approved several resolves in that resolution that address teacher training, curriculum offerings at the high school level, how to improve accuracy in our student data, and how to recognize the tribal heritage of the land where River Park Elementary School was established. And moreover, a commitment to continue learning from leaders and members of OBSN, as well as leaders of the other 8 North Carolina tribes, especially as we learn of their representation in the OCS community. And I know, Dr. Felder, you and your team, particularly Mr. Williams in the Equity Department, are continuing that work. And I just wanted to extend the moment to pause and honor Indigenous peoples in our community and nationally, and to elevate a check-in on last year's resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Doyle. All right, so we're going to move on to the next recognition, and that would be Movie Under the Stars. And so everyone is actually invited to join us for Movie Under the Stars event with the Equity Department and the Family Engagement Team. So this is a collaborative effort. This is truly an engaging opportunity for all Orange County School staff and families to come together. In part to round out our celebrations of Hispanic Heritage Month, we will come together to watch the popular film Encanto on the lawn at Gravelly Hill Middle School on October 15th. The movie will be played in Spanish only with English subtitles. And why are you why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that to help raise awareness of the value of speaking and understanding other languages. There'll be food trucks and face painting and games starting at 5:30. The movie will begin promptly at 6:30. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Kevin Smith, the Chief Public Information Officer, and Mr. Lee Williams, the second, our Chief Equity Officer, to provide any additional information or remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Felder and board. I just want to lift up that this is going to be a great event, and I hope that everybody can come out. I love Dr. Felder stating that the idea is to raise awareness. I want us to imagine that you're walking into a school building and you speak a different language. And yet everything you learn and you're taught is in another language that you don't understand. You're graded on that language. You're judged on that acquisition of language. Your test scores, your grading scores, everything you do is based off of acquisition of language and also understanding information. That's a lot. Now imagine that was our everyday experience. And so this little bit of time that we have, it's not only bring awareness of that, but also bring awareness of the greatness and the representation that our Hispanic community has shown and brought here within our country. We're excited to be up on the lawn. We're hoping that it's gonna be great weather. If not, we have a contingency plan. We'll be in the gym. So either way, just like the Postal Service on October 15th, it is going down. The question is, will you be in attendance? It's not, public session, so you can tell me, yeah, you're coming. I appreciate that.
I'm so grateful that Lee and the team from Equity also got together with Sandra Blefko and the family liaisons to conceive of an event like this, because you're going to be talking about culture tonight. Schools thrive on talking about culture because these are the kinds of things that we bring with us automatically and unspoken. And it's ironic when you think about how this is going to be, unspoken culture. Well, I'm looking forward to this experience. I've learned a few languages in school, and this is not one of them, right? So I will be closing my eyes and kind of participating in that way, but also just, I think you all can appreciate by your commitment to the different ways that we extend a hand across bridges of culture, right? Building bridges so that we can help people get across those gaps. It's truly imperative that we have more and more events like this. And so I'm grateful that we had support. And you're going to be amazed at the number of different pieces that fell together to make this happen, whether it's games inside the school, things happening outside the school, and we're all looking forward to a great night. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both.
One last thing to add up, the games actually will be ran by our high school students. So we have high school students will be participating as well. It's a great event. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, so, tonight, if you don't already know her, I want to introduce everyone to Miss Makenzie Mason, who is a kindergarten teacher at Grady Brown Elementary School. Makenzie, would you stand, please? And so last week, she was surprised at a staff meeting by district leaders who announced her as the district's beginning teacher of the year. Still more to say, Makenzie, but you come on down and bring your gang with you. Come on. And so we announced Makenzie last week as beginning teacher of the year at a staff meeting. It was awesome. Mr. Xavier Adams, who is also in the audience, North Carolina's beginning 2021 North Carolina beginning teacher of the year, and the reigning OCS teacher of the year, Miss Shannon Floyd, who is also at Grady A. Brown Elementary School, the #1 school in America. And as Shannon said, we're stacking them up, Dr. Felder. We've got the reigning teacher of the year, and now we have Orange County's beginning teacher of the year at the same school. So tonight we celebrate Makenzie's excellence and efforts, and we are excited to have her and her guests join us, including Assistant Principal Kimberly Griffiths, Ms. Shannon Floyd, the reigning Teacher of the Year, and Ms. Whitney Williams, who is Makenzie's site-based mentor. So at this time, we invite you to share some remarks.
Good evening, Board of Education members and Dr. Felder. My name is Makenzie Mason, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Grady A. Brown, proudly. I'm so honored and grateful to be standing before you today as the beginning teacher of the year for Orange County Schools. I began my teaching journey at Grady A. Brown as a student teacher. I love the communities we served and the camaraderie between teachers and members of the Orange County staff so much that I stayed on as a kindergarten teacher. During my first year, I was stretched and challenged by COVID protocols, supporting students who did not speak any English, and the typical hurdles a first-year teacher faces. I leaned on my team and my colleagues to support me and encourage me and validate my actions to support all students and partner with families as best I could. And I am so thankful for the emphasis that Orange County Schools places on collaboration and teamwork across the entire staff. Because that allowed me to really thrive during my first year. I learned that teachers are both teachers and learners, and that even the most seasoned teacher can always learn more, try new strategies, communicate more effectively, and deepen their relationship with students. I saw this firsthand at Grady Brown at PLCs and staff meetings where my administrators and my colleagues were leading with a lot of vulnerability to share their mistakes and also share their reflections for the future with an open mind to accept ideas and grow in their areas. As beginning teacher of the year for Orange County Schools, I hope to use this platform to demonstrate to other beginning teachers that teachers are constant learners. It feels comforting and empowering to know that all teachers are on a never-ending path to growth and knowledge. especially as a BT, where every turn of the school year presents something unknown or more to learn about. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to connect with new teachers and learn alongside them in this role. In college, I learned a saying about marigolds, the flower. My class at Grady Brown is called Miss Mason's Marigolds, and it's about marigolds and teaching. And for background, marigolds are called a helping plant because the other plants around them always grow strong and tall when you plant marigolds next to them. And the saying is that teachers need to find their marigolds in the profession. So you want to find your people who collaborate with you, celebrate you, and support you. And I want to thank the staff of Grady A. Brown for supporting me and being my marigolds. And I truly think that's how I came to be, is because of the staff at Grady Brown and just how supportive they've been. So thank you to them. And additionally, I want to thank my administrators from Grady Brown, Mr. Marks and Ms. Griffiths, for building and maintaining a workplace full of love and community. And I want to sincerely thank the Beginning Teacher of the Year Selection Committee for their consideration and selection. And lastly, I want to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Felder for your time and recognition. And I'm really looking forward to representing the county in the regional and state competitions for Beginning Teacher of the Year. So thank you so much for this opportunity and special distinction. Thank you.
Please come up to
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, some of us may have to go over. Just pull your chair back.
Well, tonight, I want to introduce you to another teacher that we want to recognize. So in case you do not know, Mr. David Barrow, he is an educator at Orange High School who teaches English 3 and Math 3 general education inclusion classes. Well, last week, he was surprised as well at work for being named the 2022 EC Teacher of Excellence for Orange County Schools. So Mr. Burrows, please stand. And you can head to the podium as well and bring with you your principal, Mr. Johnson. And so Mr. Burrows will be honored next month at the North Carolina Conference on Exceptional Children. There he will be celebrated alongside other EC Teachers of Excellence from districts across the state. Mr. Burrows is a 21-year veteran educator. And he said the last 4 years he has spent at Orange High School have been the absolute highlight of his teaching journey so far. So tonight we are so excited to recognize you, Mr. Burrows, and like to invite you and Ms. Crimmins, Ms. Skolnick, and or Mr. Johnson to celebrate with you tonight. So again, congratulations, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have a lot to say, but I do want to thank my principal, Mr. Jason Johnson, for being here to support me. That means a lot. And also Ms. Golnick and Ms. Crimmins. I can honestly say, as Dr. Felder mentioned, that working in Orange County schools has been the best experience that I've had as an educator. And I am looking forward to many more years of service here.
Great.
So I have a few more words to add from Mr. Barrow, but each year, the Department of Public Instruction encourages districts to nominate an educator of excellence. And again, this year, Mr. David Barrow is our educator of excellence. And as I was looking at the outcome goals for our strategic plan, Mr. Barrow encompasses each and every one of those goals. So I'm going to read just a little bit from the letter of nomination, but despite the constant obstacles that COVID and the past 2 years have presented, Mr. Barrow continues to show up for his students and coworkers each day with a fresh perspective and desire to see each student's success. In addition to the instructional piece, Mr. Barrow maintains excellence in IEP compliance. He is professional and compassionate when building relationships with families, always encouraging a collaborative approach to any situation. He creates data-driven IEPs and helps families begin the post-secondary planning process to ensure that our students have the greatest opportunity to transition into the community after high school as a meaningful, contributing member of society. So, Mr. Barrow, we congratulate you on behalf of Orange High School, Orange County Schools, and the Exceptional Children's Department. We could not have a better representative at this year's conference. So thank you very much for your work.
Come on around. Come on up.
All right, well, tonight I want to introduce someone else to everyone, and that would be Tia Hilber. Tia is a junior at Orange High School, and she is joined by her principal and her teacher, Mr. Xavier Adams. And so Ms. Hilber had an opportunity to address the National Governors Association at the Governor's Education Policy Advisors Institute. Tia shared her point of view and personal take on the importance of offering cultural diversity classes. So here tonight, we have Ms. Hilber, Mr. Xavier, who again is the 2021 Beginning Teacher of the Year for the state of North Carolina. And so congratulations to both of you, and I would love for you to tell us about why this was an important occasion for both of you. So please share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Felder, as well as the entire board, for the invitation to speak with you all this evening. Obviously, I'm not Tia Hilber, so I'm going to try and get out of the way as soon as possible. But a couple things that I want to just mention before Tia comes up is I just want to once again congratulate Ms. Mason on being honored the Orange County Schools Beginning Teacher of the Year. I had the privilege of watching her teach, and from the moment I stepped into the school building, I saw a student run up and hug her. And I think that speaks to the type of classroom environment that she's created, in which her students feel safe, feel seen, feel welcome in her presence. And I just really want to elevate the work that she's doing, as well as the other beginning teachers across the state, coming out of COVID, continuing to find our practice, find our lane in the education system, and being a beginning teacher certainly right now is a unique experience. So I want to honor Ms. Mason in particular, as well as all of our beginning teachers. And I also want to say Ms. Mason has some really wonderful ideas in terms of where the beginning teacher process can go for the district, in terms of collaboration, in terms of teamwork, in terms of mentorship. And those kind of came out in the interview process with her. And so I hope that the district takes the opportunity to kind of hear her out on some of those ideas. I think they're really brilliant. Second thing I want to do is also congratulate my coworker, Mr. Barrow. He's an incredibly nice human being. Every morning when I walk into the school building, he's one of the first people that I see. And every day he greets me with a genuine smile, with a genuine greeting. And so, Mr. Barrow, congratulations to you, and I'm grateful to be working alongside with you. Kind of my last ultimate remarks are on October 22nd, Tia, Hilber, and I, as well as a senior of mine, Judith Rodriguez, we will be presenting at the Color of Education in Raleigh, North Carolina, which will probably be, in my estimation, the biggest event for thinking about equity in public education, as well as thinking about anti-racism in education. We'll be presenting alongside Duke professor Adam Hollowell. And I just want to elevate that to say that our students in this district are absolutely incredible. They have a lot of amazing things to say, and so I'm glad to just be in the part of the process of presenting alongside two of my students that I've had the privilege of teaching. To kind of frame the experience that Tia and I had on September 16th, we were invited by Dyson Pasion, who is an education advisor to Governor Cooper, to speak with the National Governors Association and some different policy advisors to different governors from across the state in Greensboro. And T and I collaborated on what remarks we wanted to say, and we kind of decided that it would be best for all of these big wigs and important people to hear from a student rather than just another teacher. And so Tia offered genuinely the majority of our remarks. But our game plan for that was really thinking about this idea of dreaming. Every student has dreams, and it's important for us to listen to them. And so I centered our time together on Langston Hughes' poem, Harlem. I'm going to read that really quickly, and then I'm going to offer the mic up to Tia. So this is Langston Hughes' poem, Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Every student in our district has dreams, and I am excited to be a part of our district's work to cultivate those dreams. Now to the stage is Tia Hilber.
Good evening, everyone. There we go. My name is Tia Hilber, and I'm a junior at Orange High School. As Mr. Xavier said, I was offered the amazing opportunity to speak at a recent conference for the National Governors Association. I was able to share a bit of my perspective on my experiences from the past 12 years that I have been in the Orange County school system. I spoke about the underrepresentation that I often felt as a young girl while learning about my Black heritage at school. The fact that sometimes it felt embarrassing that the majority of the history I could truly relate to was so negative, while the positive sides weren't shared as often. Yet I also got to speak about the enlightening experience that I had when taking African American Studies as a sophomore. This class was taught by Mr. Xavier, and I learned more about my culture than I had in my entire educational career so far. My class got to hear from a number of guest speakers, plan social activism projects, and talk about and debate social issues in depth. Overall, it was a great decision to take this class. It's an experience that I believe all students of any race or ethnicity should be able to partake in, especially within the Orange County school system. As we know, Orange High School currently has 2 cultural studies classes, African American Studies and Latin American Studies. Even having these classes is a huge step forward to times in the past. We've made progress, but that doesn't mean we can stop moving forward. As I earlier said, when I was younger, I could tell that my culture was less represented than those of my peers. This was a devastating reality to come to terms with, and I wasn't truly able to learn about my culture until I was 15 years old. I wish I could have had the experience of taking a deeper dive into my culture in my educational years, a time where I was still trying to understand the world around me and how I fit into it. There are many ways to increase the representation that students can experience in school early in life. Adding small things such as every couple of weeks, young students get to learn a little bit about important figures from various different cultures, or large annual things such as the Cultural Explosion, an event that used to take place before the pandemic that showcased a plethora of different cultures to younger audiences. I vividly remember having tons of fun at this event as a kid while learning about cultures that I had never gotten to learn about before. These are just a few examples of the ways that the younger generations can be introduced to cultures early on. Though the task may sound daunting, it's a key factor in making sure that every student in our school district can feel included and secure within their identities. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Tia, we want to shake your hand. My former student.
Okay, thank you again, Tia. All right. So we are off to the next recognition for this evening. Thank you. So the month of October is National Principals Month. We salute, yes, I heard a whoop whoop back there. We salute all of our school principals tonight who are joining us virtually. Throughout October, let us all take advantage of the occasion to elevate and celebrate the leaders who do so much for our students, staff, and families. There's not one stakeholder their day-to-day duties do not touch. These 13 people touch everyone, all of our stakeholders. And we couldn't be more proud of them and grateful for them. And so they work tirelessly with immeasurable strength, commitment, and dedication to keep our schools safe and to help teachers, staff, and students thrive. Words just aren't enough to express how grateful we are for each Orange County Schools administrator. So they're joining us virtually, and so we're going to stand and give them a round of applause as well. Thank you all.
And we have one in the audience. Mr. Johnson. We have Mr.
Yes,
Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, of course,
Sorry.
he's in person. He's been part of a couple of recognitions tonight. Yes, he is here in person representing his team. So thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right. And so, boy, to go from that to this, but here we are. So it's a behavior that's aggressive. It's a behavior that's mean and potentially life-threatening. What am I talking about? Bullying. Bullying comes in many forms, none of which are acceptable. According to a recent federal survey, nearly 20% of high school students in the United States reported being bullied on school property within the past year. 15% reported cyberbullying. October is National Bullying Prevention Month. It reminds us that students, parents, teachers, staff, and school administrators all play a role. Positive change comes as we begin to emphasize respect and inclusion on campuses across the country. We encourage students to practice empathy, teachers to reward students who show respect, and administrators to have a plan to help parents, teachers, and students understand the problem and know how to confront it. So again, October is National Bullying Prevention Month. And we are grateful that we have a number of strategies and resources in the district to be of support. All right, and last but certainly not least, National School Lunch Week is next week. So the Child Nutrition Department is requesting the entire district to participate in 1970s themed dress-up day on Friday, October 14th. So dig in your closets, everyone, and get out those old clothing items on the 14th. So all week long, different sites will be holding special events at their school cafeterias. Any staff who participate in the dress-up That's at 1970 styles only, on Friday, October 14th, will receive a free coffee and cookie provided by Child Nutrition Services. So staff, you just need to stop by the cafeteria, dress 1970 style, you get your cup of coffee and cookie. Students will also receive, yeah, that's a big deal. Students will also receive a special treat with their lunch on the 14th. And no, students, you don't have to dress up 1970 style. So there's something for everyone in honor of National School Lunch Week. So enjoy. And Mr. Atherton, that concludes tonight's recognitions.
Wow, that's hard to follow after a lunch and
I know.
making me think about the pizzas. All right. So we have the agenda adoption. Do we have a motion to approve? I do believe we're moving the Grady Brown from an approval to a discussion. So that would be one change to the agenda.
Correct.
So I'll move to approve the agenda with that change.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Tonight, we have no public comment, so we'll go straight over to board comments. We'll start with Dr. Moore. Any comments?
I don't have any.
Okay. Well,
I'm done, thank you.
I had only a couple of things. One was requesting a status update on Indigenous Peoples Day, the resolution. So would love to hear what progress we've made there. And appreciation for all these incredible educators that exist in this district. Hope that we will take Ms. Mason's thoughts on the beginning, I'm sure we will, beginning teacher program. And someone mentioned the cultural explosion. Oh, that was Tia. That was a great event too, that I think had an intent similar to the Encanto event, a little bit different. And so I loved going to that. I would love to see that revived. It's coming. It's coming in the spring. Yes. Okay, great.
all right. Ms. Hauser?
No comments.
Mr. Richmond?
I'm going to piggyback off of what Sarah said. I think the congratulations to all the winners, the new teacher, the beginning teacher of the year, and EC teacher. I hate that they left out because I was going to sing in the Grady A. Brown song to Miss Mason. But yeah, she's still here. She's gone. Yeah, she's gone. Yeah. But I mean, it touched my heart though because I got my start in EC at Grady Brown. So that really meant a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to her and to Mr. Barrow too, and to the principals. I worked alongside with most all the principals, and so especially Mr. Johnson and now Mr. Farrington. So thank you for all the hard work that you put in. And Tia, she's doing a wonderful job, and she mentioned she's in African American Studies, and I took that class when I was in high school. And I learned a lot. It was under Miss Brenda McCormick, and she was like a mother in that classroom. So she taught us a lot. And we also had a course class in African American Studies too. So that was very special, but some great memories.
All right. For me, just a few things. Besides congratulations to everyone, that was fantastic, especially getting to see and hear the specifics. So first, I wanted to thank Dr. Moore for her leadership on our letter to the General Assembly on the support of master's pay. And before all board members leave tonight, I do need y'all's signatures so we can actually send that off. But thank you, Dr. Moore, for all your leadership on that. Second, I did want to remind the board there are many education sessions coming up from the North Carolina School Boards Association. There's an ethics training that's right before the North Carolina School Board's annual conference on the 13th. That does count towards the required training. And then in December, there are 2 core trainings which count towards the required training as well. The December ones are not open yet, but just a reminder, those are great education things to go to. And last, I just wanted to take a second to thank staff for the cards in front of us that most people can't see. That back of them have our board norms, so we are reminded on the things we would like to do and say and how we want to keep that in mind, and then also looking at our equity lens and the things to keep in mind. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank staff for that. I know we don't always get a chance to do that, but thank y'all for putting those together and having in front of us. All right, the next item we have is the consent agenda. I do know there is one request to remove one item from the consent, the BounceBack Educator Stress Contract. Are there other items to pull from consent? All right, excellent. So if we pull that, is there a preference from the board where we put it right after consent to discuss, or where would that go? Okay, we'll put it right after consent if there's no issues with that. So can we have a motion to approve consent with the modified personnel report and the bounce back pulled?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move straight to the bounce back educator stress contract. So for that item, I know there were some questions around it. Any specific items to cover under that, or?
I'll start, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
We have heard from some teachers that the person that works with this is not someone that they are comfortable or feel like they need to have leading this stress management program. And so that's why we're bringing it here, that they have read and seen some things that are alarming, and actually are saying they'd rather have something else than this. So that's why we're bringing this forth tonight.
Any other?
Can you just clarify who is we?
Teachers, who the person is.
Oh, when you said we're bringing it forth, I just wasn't
I
clear.
just meant this took it out and moved it to this position. Teachers are saying that what they have seen of the person leading this is that he is bullying, and he is disrespectful to some other people, and they have looked him up and found this out. And so we felt that this needed to be brought for everybody to know, so that before it was voted on. And teachers are not comfortable coming forth. They just don't feel that that's they just don't want to.
Yeah, I'll just to support what Ann's saying, I've similarly have heard, there's some bad press around the principles associated with the organization. And so there's a question about, can we just find something else that people might be more receptive to?
I'm just kind of, I want to make sure we don't start talking too many generalities, because I think we also heard positive feedback from teachers who wanted this program. So I'm sure there's a diversity of thoughts about it.
Yes, and we have approximately 60 people thus far, staff persons thus far, so it's not just for teachers, it's for all staff. We have about 60 who have expressed an interest in this resource, and so it is all virtual. It is a stress management, a stress education, how to mindfulness which is something that our staff requested via a survey. And also, staff can earn CPU credits at the same time. And so there is an interest.
Any other comments from board members?
And so just to clarify, this isn't a requirement that staff would participate
No,
in
it's totally
something.
optional.
It's that, and we don't even have enough seats or whatever where everyone could do that, right?
No.
So like people who have requested this and have an interest in it could participate. I mean, to me, that sort of addresses the issue of some people have a concern about it and some people don't. Yeah. So.
Gary?
I guess my only other thought is if we do hear from people who want something different, can there be an additional offering? Can we go ahead with this since there's interest, but that if other people are interested in the offering, but not that particular offering, that there could be another one we pursue? Or I don't know how common something like what BounceBack offers is, if it's something that's hard to find or.
There are YouTube videos, and that's what we were trying to avoid. So we wanted to give something that was of high quality and that would meet the needs as expressed by staff.
Thank you.
Are there other programs, excuse me, are there other programs that are offered online that you know of?
The YouTube videos that
Just
I'm aware of.
YouTube?
That I'm aware of, yeah.
I
I don't know of anything like this particular product.
So Dr. Felder, could you just speak to sort of the vetting process for like selecting this? And so how we know that it's high quality, or like if we are districts that are using it or any of that?
And so, as I shared previously with the board, there was a survey administered. I administered a survey as part of my end-of-year message last year around social-emotional wellness. And per that feedback from staff, there were 3 areas that bubbled up. One was around, because the survey got at what can we do to better support you with regards to your social-emotional wellness. And so staff asked for short videos that would support them with mindfulness and stress. They asked for strength training, either before or after school, and we're still working on that. And they asked for opportunities to meet up, social activities that would be organized by the district. Those were the top 3 items. And so for the first thing that came to mind was, well, there are lots of things on YouTube that we could access, or anyone could access. You really don't need support from the district for that. As I said, the second item we're working on, and the third one around social events, the district is working on that too, because we stood up a social emotional wellness committee. And so there's a group that is focused on, hyper-focused on staff social emotional wellness. But going back to the first item, I happened to share with some colleagues that this was about this survey and what came out of it, because we're not the only ones who are working on addressing staff's social emotional wellness after COVID, as well as children's. And this BounceBack was referenced. I had not heard of it. But there are other districts that are using this product. And so I reached out and got information. One of the persons who is the, I want to say Chief Operating Officer, as I shared with the board, I disclosed this to anyone that I shared the information about the product with, happened to be a board member in a former district. And so I even said when I brought a group together to learn more about the product. I didn't know whether I should be upset with him that I had to learn about it through colleagues versus him reaching out to share this great product, but we reviewed it. And that's what we do. We vet through staff. And so we brought together a group of staff, school-based and central services, to vet the product, and based on their feedback, we move forward with where we are to bring us to where we are today. And so again, this was strictly in response to a request made by staff, but what again sets it apart is not only the quality, because on YouTube you can get a variety of videos that you have to go through and kind of figure out what's best, but this was designed for teachers by teachers, although it's available for all staff. In fact, part of the feedback we received was that it was so good that I should require principals to use it as part of their staff meetings. And I said, well, that's not something I would want to require, but we certainly would encourage principals to use it, but more importantly, staff to use it. So through AASA, which is a Superintendent's Association, any members of that association, their districts receive a buy one, get one. And so we want to make 100 seats available to our staff, and would actually be making 200 seats available as a result of that. And so again, it's optional. No one's forced to use it. And yeah.
Any other comments?
Thank you for the question.
So I will share that I did get calls about a person in the organization and about concerns about that. And I do have concerns supporting a company like that. It's not about their product for me, it's about that. And I'm open to looking at any other products, but I do have big concerns with that. All right, so it's before us.
I'll make a motion to approve this contract in support of it.
Before the vote votes on, I did just notice, and I will just add that the company accepted all of my legal edits to the document, so legally it's fine. It does look, though, that there's still some missing information on the Schedule A, which is the number of authorized users, and the number, they're also offering a 2-for-1 promotional offer, and that number is also still blank. So if you do vote to approve it, I just ask that you add that you're delegating to the administration to fill in those numbers if you want to put some parameters on it. I think some numbers had been discussed. I don't remember where things landed in those discussions. But if you'll authorize the superintendent to fill in that information, perhaps subject to some cap if you wish, then we could cover it.
I don't know if pursuant's the right word, but aligned with what's described in the abstract. That would be my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm sure.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Nay? Nay? Motion does not carry. All right, next on the agenda, we have the teacher working conditions survey data.
Okay, and so joining us to share the data and provide an overview of that would be Connie Brimmer, Executive Director for Human Capital.
Good evening, Orange County Board of Education. I am excited to talk to you about the teacher working conditions survey, and then also to share a few data points in regard to teacher turnover and vacancy data. So the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and the North Carolina State Board of Education have made a sustained commitment to listening to educators and reforming schools to create the working conditions necessary for both student and teacher success. As a result, the North Carolina Teaching Working Conditions Survey is administered biannually to collect the anonymous voices of educators across the state of North Carolina. From the data is disaggregated and provided to districts in early June. The survey is broken down to 12 categories visible on this slide. One note, school leadership is broken down into 3 separate areas. All district and individual data is available for public consumption on the North Carolina Working Conditions Survey website. We had 89.32 of Orange County eligible educators participate in the survey this year. The structure of the survey asked individuals to rate a variety of questions under each category using the following ratings: strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, disagree, or don't know. The agree analysis takes a look at the percent of employees favorably choosing either agree or strongly agree on each item. Green is greater than or equal to 70%. Blue is greater than or equal to 50%. Orange is greater than or equal to 30%. And red is less than 30%. On the left, you will see each category and the number of questions asked. The right represents the percent of questions within each category that individuals rated positively, meaning either agree or strongly agree. So, for example, the category of time has 7 questions. There were no questions rated greater than or equal to 70%. 85.71 of the questions fell within the greater than or equal to 50%. 14.29 of the questions fell within the greater than or equal to 30%, and we had no questions that were below 30%. As you can see, the Orange County District had no questions in any category at the red level, and the majority of the questions were at the blue or green level. We did have 4 categories that had 1 or more questions that fell within the orange category. They were in time, instructional practices and support, school leadership, the district level, and professional development. We would also like to acknowledge that although the large majority of our questions fell within the blue or green level, there are discrepancies between the district average and state average. And we're going to revisit that concept in just a second. At this time, we are targeting the questions that had orange ratings, but we also recognize there room for improvement in other questions. So under the category of time, we targeted the non-instructional time provided for teachers in my school is sufficient. Non-instructional time does include time not with students, for example, planning, staff meetings, collaboration, and so forth. Under the category of school leadership at the district level, we have targeted there is an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect within the district. Under the category of professional development, there were 2 questions we targeted. One is professional development is differentiated to meet the needs of teachers, and professional development is evaluated and results are communicated to teachers. There were 2 questions under instructional practices and support that were also orange. One was teachers regularly assign homework that requires access to the internet to complete, and teachers regularly assign homework that requires access to digital devices to complete. Both of these areas were also low at the state level. We have chosen not to focus on these 2 areas because we know that there is a lack of reliable internet in parts of our county. So some district strategies we have already put in place. First, the use of the North Carolina Working Conditions Survey is not optional. All school improvement teams will use the data to create strategies related to their own data. And that is important because the district average represents what happens at the school level. So we feel that in doing that, we can close the discrepancy between some of the district agreement ratings and the state agreement ratings. Goals for the North Carolina Teaching Working Conditions Survey are also embedded and addressed in our strategic plan and all of our outcomes. But Goal 3 specifically added the goal to have all questions in either blue or the green category at the district and the school level by 2024. Under the issue of time, strategies have been put in place to address non-instructional time. So 4 additional workdays were added to the school calendar to provide more time for teachers to plan. The bell schedule was also adjusted to allow more planning time and to assist with students arriving on time at the start of the instructional day. Because we do value and protect individuals' planning time, we are also compensating teachers who are willingly covering classes during their planning time. The district is unpacking the question lack of mutual trust and respect. It is very important for us to understand the why behind this rating. In order to do so, the following strategies have been put in place. Intentional opportunities have been created for employees across the district to share concerns, gather input, and brainstorm solutions in a safe space. These opportunities include the Superintendent Roundtable with Teachers of the Year, principals, and classified staff. There are monthly collaboration meetings going on with OCAE. We are also exploring employee affinity groups. Cabinet will be leading biannual meetings with school-based staff. And there is a formation of the Social and Emotional Wellness Committee. Staff will also be collecting additional data points via the use of some survey tools. We are working on the development of the Orange County Teacher Working Conditions Survey that will be administered annually and to include classified staff. There will be a wellness survey also, and a review of quarterly exit survey data to take place to look for patterns in attrition. We are also exploring the opportunity for a 360 survey to give us more information across the district. The district has also consolidated some communication efforts to staff, as there is OCS connection letter, newsletter that is provided to our stakeholders, and there is a monthly newsletter that's going out to include social and emotional wellness for staff. In regards to professional development, the district is requiring evaluations for all staff development. These evaluations should be used and targeted for improvement in how we deliver staff instruction or staff development and what support is needed after the staff development takes place. There will be an increased focus on differentiation for staff members so that each staff member's needs will be met. Some of that differentiation will come through coaching cycles so that our on-site coaches can provide job-embedded PD. We're going to switch gears just a little bit and kind of go over to the teacher turnover data. As you may recall, last year, the teacher turnover data was delayed. The state board did not approve the data until I think it was March of last year. And so we were not provided the data until April. So we want to revisit that for you. And just for clarity, the teacher turnover report is a yearly measure of attrition in LEAs. Attrition is defined as a teacher who is on the payroll of March of one year, but not on the payroll of March of the following year. And it is teachers. It does not include support staff. So we just submitted the raw data for the 21-22. We do not have official teacher turnover data for 21-22, but we do have some informal data points that we will share with you. So this data which you see includes both the school and the district turnover rates over a 3-year period, as well as a 3-year average. One note I would just like to make about Partnership Academy. Partnership only has 7 state-paid teachers, and 4 of them are state-paid positions, and 4 of them are teachers. So that data can be a little bit skewed. Our LEA attrition rate for 2021 was 12.5, and that was compared to the statewide attrition rate of 8.2. The next data points represent teacher turnover data by code, And so every time an employee resigns, when they fill out a volunteer resignation form, they will indicate what their reason is for resigning. And you can see from this slide that we had 112, and again, this is 21-22, so this is informal data, but we had 112 teachers that left between March 2021 and March 2022. Our highest category at 33.93 was left to teach in another system. We did have 11.61% retirement, and then 8.93 family responsibilities. So the following data points looks at our beginning teachers, and you can see the attrition or rates for, or our turnover rate, excuse me, for our beginning teachers through a 3-year period. And I know we have discussed it at a previous board meeting, but what you can see is that the retention rates when you hit B3 start to drop off. That's where we're losing our beginning teachers. And so if you recall back a couple board meetings ago, you graciously approved the beginning teacher and mentor support coordinator and our 20 lead mentors. So this data was used to determine the need to support all of our beginning teachers years 1 through 3. The state also looks at vacancy data. So vacancy data looks at positions, certified positions, all certified positions that are vacant on the 1st and the 40th day of school. Again, 22 is not available yet. We're still working on that report. The 40th day of school is right around the corner, so we haven't got that far yet. But this is a look through a 3-year period of vacancy rates. Now, I will say there's some nuances to this that you should know. As you look at vacancy rates, it also not only includes vacant positions, but it includes teachers who are on a permit to teach, an emergency license, or a residency license, or teachers that we filled, or positions that we have filled with retired teachers. So in essence, our vacancy rate is much better than what this looks, but we do have to include those individuals in the data set. So if you just look at the first day of school, on the first day of school this year, we had 44 vacancies, and you can compare that to the past 2 years, and you can see it's steadily gone up. But again, if I compare that to surrounding districts right now, I will tell you that Chapel Hill Carborough has 114 certified vacancies listed on their website. Person County has 14 certified vacancies, and Chatham County has 90 certified vacancies. And these vacancies are actually positions and do not include all the alternative license. And I can tell you, I believe it is, we are right at, I think it's 13 core teacher positions. So the others are support staff or other positions across the district. So what are we doing to recruit and retain our staff? We are steadily working on fall recruitment events. Now, teacher education programs don't heavily have education fairs in the fall. They do in the spring. However, we have targeted ECU, Appalachian State, UNC Charlotte, and several of our HBCUs have specific hiring events that we are going to attend. We are also going to be a vendor at the North Carolina Mathematics Conference. We know that that's a dire need, and that's the best place I know to find math teachers. So we have steadily implemented our recruitment and retention bonus. I do know that's listed on both sides because it's not just a signing bonus, it's also you have to come back for 2 consecutive years to receive the full amount. We have increased our supplement rates in the sense that we are allowed now to count experience on a North Carolina educator license, which has made a huge difference. I can tell you from midsummer to now, our vacancies have gone steadily down because of that. One not widely known fact that I hope folks who are listening will hear this one. We do have tuition reimbursement for our residency license individuals. I think that's important. We've had 33 TAs that we've been able to place over the course of 3 years in teaching positions. And the tuition reimburses allows us to support them financially because it is a cost involved to clearing their license. We also have incentive pay for covering classes for our certified staff who are covering classes either due to vacancies or absences, and we also have that pay for our TAs. I will tell you, I've checked around, we also have the most competitive rate for substitute teachers in the area, and especially for long-term subs. We have placed 32 student teachers or interns for this year. We're working on some more. We're not through yet, but right now we have 32 student teachers. All of those folks, we provide those names to principals early so they have them. We've even been able to have a couple of early hires for December. And again, the Grow Your Own has been huge. That's the way we've been able to fill a lot of vacancies. And I said 33, it's actually 31, but I have 2 on the board report, so it's 33. And we've also been able to collaborate a lot with our communication department to increase our social media presence. As we know, individuals who are looking for jobs, that's the way we look now. We go through social media. So we have a LinkedIn, we have job posting boards, and so we have worked on our social media presence. Again, we talked about the beginning teacher support previously, but we have enhanced our beginning teacher support, and we're still assessing that and determining what to do differently. And then we're also going to implement a 30-day hiring assessment so that if there is a position that lays vacant for 30 days, that we are assessing whether that position, what is the issue? Do we have enough candidates? Are there specific recruiting tools we need? Is this position something that we maybe don't need for this year and we can look to fill that need in a different way? But we are going to implement a 30-day hiring assessment. And I think I skipped over, but those are the retention efforts. Any questions?
Gary?
Thank you so much, Ms. Burmer. There's so much information in there. It's really exciting. Just quick comment and then a question. Really excited to see that many TAs, 31 TAs becoming teachers just in the past 3 years, and all those teacher intern placements. We had some information we received about that. Can you just clarify for me again? 32 is the number of some of them we have now, some of them we have in the spring, or these are people we're hoping to hire as teachers? Could you just spell that out for me a little bit more?
So that number is the number of either student teachers or interns that we have in the district. And they represent a variety of universities. And so some of those folks are eligible to be hired in December because they are either in a MAT program that allows them to become a residency license, or they're graduating in December. The large majority of them graduate in the spring, but we have been able to identify some that will be graduating earlier than the spring, I should say.
Thank you.
Other questions? Bonnie?
Good, Sarah, go ahead.
I'm still formulating. You can go.
Yeah, I have a couple I'll start with. First of all, just on the attrition data, that was people who left from, you said from March 21 to March 22. So people that left between March and the end of the year would not be counted on that, because those numbers were not the same as the numbers you presented to us in August. They were really different.
You are correct. The state looks from March to March. When we bring numbers to you, we look at the year, but the state identifies it on the payroll of March of one year, but not on the payroll of March of the next year.
Okay. And just again, a clarifying point on what you presented. The district teacher working condition results are different than the school. So the district is not the aggregate of the schools. This is what people said about the district. What about what people said about the schools? Because when I looked at it, there were some pretty large disparities.
So each school has their own set of results. All of those results, however, do play into the district results. Our results are an average of all the schools.
Oh, they
so,
are?
yes, the same questions, an average of all the schools. But each school does have their own separate report and their own separate data. So what one school may target may be very different than what another school may target.
So how does that get addressed, and what do we do with that? What happens with that information?
I think that's where your school improvement plan is key, because those school improvement plans are specific to that school, and so they're specific to their data points. So in essence, each school improvement team may have different data points and different goals, but that's the route for school improvement, so.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you so much for all of this information, and I'm glad that we are discussing all of these things at the same time. They really fit together so much. One thought I had, so in looking at the data, like the professional development piece, like really popped, the areas you're concentrating on, but also like just having sufficient non-instructional time and all of these things. And I saw some of that in some of the schools as they're restructuring their days. And I was struck when you said, when you started talking about the coaching and that as being a real strategy for the differentiation. And I was like, gosh, I wonder if teachers think of coaching as professional, when they're answering this question, that's professional development, or if you just think of that as, do you think of professional development as the sessions you go to, So that was sort of that's an interesting thing to think about. The other thing that I noticed, so I looked at where were the places where we were furthest off from the state average in the questions. And another sort of area that popped was around student conduct, I think is what they call managing student conduct is the category. So like policies and procedures about student conduct are clearly understood by the faculty, or like they call it under the school leadership section, but like the school leadership is focused enough on like managing student conduct. So that struck me as like another cluster of things to focus on. And so I wonder if there's anything, what are we doing there?
So one, let me say, I appreciate the point and that school, that the data is different at every school. And so, but there are some discrepancies between the state average and the district average. And so I'm gonna have to ask Ms. Carr to answer that one.
I'm going to be addressing that in my presentation in just a minute, so I can certainly jump in now, or, okay.
We can cover it then, thank you. Great. Sorry, and last comment, just that I noticed that the district trust question only had 21 responses. Is that only asked to administrators, that question?
No, so the data is collected from the school site. District administrators do not get to respond. You get a code at your individual school site, and then you complete the survey. But like, for instance, I don't get a code.
Right, I meant like school level administrators, because there's a set of questions in the school leadership or district leadership. There's a certain set of like 6 or 7 questions that only have 21 responses. And I'm wondering, is that like APs and principals? Yes. Okay. That's helpful context, because then you could just go to the principals, be like, okay, so lots of principals disagreed with this, like, tell me more,
All right, other questions?
And other people. All right, I have trust is a funny word. It's a big word, right? And when you talked about actions that the district is doing, they're more about talking and meeting, and there's I was taught to trust someone not based on what they say, but based on what they do. And I was curious, what are the things that we're being asked to do differently, the district is being asked to do differently to build trust amongst the schools and amongst the community?
So if I can answer that question, and so that's one of the reasons why we are convening, because we can't answer that question. We need to go to the people who gave us that feedback to get their insights and perspectives and recommendations. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, so when would we get kind of an idea, a response back on what we're learning? It's a big deal, right, to hear that. That's all, and it's some, just curious when we would know, because when will we have a sense about what you're learning from the schools and
yeah, so as we gather that information, we will share. We've done that previously. So.
A month, 6 months? I'm just trying to get us.
It won't be 6 months. We are just beginning our convening. So as we gather information, we will share.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions?
I do just want to say, I am that cluster of things. I have really been encouraging us to talk to people, and so I think about what is underneath this. And so I'm really pleased about the teacher and principal and classified advisory groups, meeting monthly with OCIE, the EC teacher advisory group to get underneath some of the things around EC, what it's like to be an EC teacher or TA in this district, and the social emotional wellness. I mean, I think the question is how you get then folks to be honest in spaces if there isn't that trust in the first place. So just, I guess I'm curious, what are thoughts about that? How are we working to build that trust so that folks are sharing what's really on their minds?
Well, again, I think it starts by being responsive and bringing people together. We started that work last year. Was successful with our principal roundtables, our student roundtables, not so much with the classified staff roundtable or the teacher roundtable, but we're getting at them a little differently this year. So I think it begins in that way. We're meeting at schools and attending staff meetings. Folks have, when we ask, they tell. We've not had any, folks have been very forthcoming thus far, and I anticipate that they will continue to be. People want to know that you're listening and make it clear we can't fix everything, but we have to start by hearing from you and providing a safe space for you to share. And folks have. We have a chart paper full of responses and information.
That's great.
That we are combing through, so it will take time before we share.
All right, I just have a quick few, hopefully. So the graduation contracts that we give out, I didn't see that listed in the recruitment efforts. Are we having any success from that?
So you're talking about teacher cadets? Yeah.
Yes.
So we do offer a scholarship for individuals at each high school who are going into teacher ed programs. And in addition to that, we tell them when they graduate to contact us back and we will help you find a job. And so we have had some limited success. I won't say it's as successful as I would like for it to be. I think the population at both high schools last year of folks who were interested in teacher education programs was small. And so I think that's a great point, Mr. Atherton. I think it's something we can definitely grow and work on.
Okay, the other two, I got two comments that are kind of combined. We had asked if we could do recruitment referrals, that we could bring back a proposal from HR where existing teachers, certified and classified, that we could offer something. Definitely would still love to see that to help in the efforts, especially getting people you know. Also, the recommendation on the recruitment and retention bonus limitations, some of the guide rails of, hey, you can't get the bonus, then leave, then come back, right? Or is it 2 years, you have to wait before you would be eligible? So would love to see that one as well come back. The bail schedule, I just wanted to add that one of the reasons we changed that as well was high school feedback from teachers being too late. Also was impacting students that were in sports, missing more class. So just wanted to highlight there were great reasons for that as well. Could you say a little bit about what the 360 survey is? I know what it means from my perspective and outside of the school district, but could you give kind of what that would entail?
So at this point, I think we're really just in the beginning discussions of that. And I don't know if Dr. Felder wants to chime in, but I know that we are kind of just starting to talk about what that's going to look like.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with a 360 evaluation, there are plenty of tools out there that would give an individual feedback in a way that they may not be able to get it otherwise. And so while we have surveys and other ways to get feedback, it's a very useful, or can be a very useful tool for individuals who to get specific feedback in a way that will help them to continue to grow and develop, to hear from individuals who are subordinates with regards to, and sometimes it could even be colleagues, with regards to what you do well, where there are areas of improvement, et cetera. And so we are looking into acquiring such a tool.
I think that's wonderful to help out understanding things that you may not realize or what's perceived. That's fantastic to hear. One of the things that I would be very curious to know is when we look at the data from our schools on people leaving, I think another interesting data point is the transfer. Like how many people are transferring from a school to another school, because we don't capture that, and we don't always capture why they're doing that. I know some just like the schedule better, the timing, but I think that's an interesting thing just to understand, especially in the climate we're in. And the last one is, what ability do we have for anybody in our school system to report stuff anonymously?
So certainly from that, I'm going to speak from the human capital lens, but certainly from my lens, we get anonymous reports. Now we do do our due diligence to verify the information. But I don't know from the district lens if there's a bigger way to do that. But from our employee standpoint, we are that department, and we do get folks who come and speak to us, and we tell them immediately we will hold them anonymous as long as it's not something we have to report, of course. But I do know student lens, there are ways to report things from that lens.
Say something out, but
Yeah.
I've been asked in the past, is there a way for a teacher or a staff member, if they have concerns, to be able to report it in a manner that, like you said, somebody could go look and investigate and determine?
Yeah, if I could, I would think that our human capital department would be the place that you would want to refer staff to. They have the skills and training to receive that information and know how to move forward with that. I mean, I do know staff have reached out to myself and others, and I certainly, depending on what's shared, will refer them to human capital. So that happens.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Bonnie?
Just a quick comment, and you may already be looking at this, but Johns Hopkins, your alma mater, has a very well-regarded Schools Culture 360 program where it's a subscription service. You sign up, and it's an ongoing evaluation. They look at your schools, they can benchmark you against others, but it's very highly regarded, might be worth looking at.
Thank you for sharing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So next up is the school improvements plans.
Yes, and that would be Miss Lori Carr. She's the Chief of Schools and Achievement. Ms. Carr.
Good evening. It's great to be back with you this evening, and a couple of you set me up really well with this presentation, so with your questions, I appreciate that. I'm back with you this evening to continue our conversation around school improvement plans, and I just wanted to put a couple of reminders out there for you. You did approve those last year via video. Since NC STAR was introduced through DPI in 2011, all but 106 schools in North Carolina are utilizing that platform. So we have 2,767 schools in the state. Currently, 2,661 are using them. So we are in the process of moving to that platform with Fidelity. If you had an opportunity to read through some of the comprehensive reports that were shared in Assembly, you'll see some historical data within that. And I know that can present as a little bit confusing. The presentation through the platform is meant for it to become a historical roadmap, if you will, of the school's success over time. Orange County Schools evidently has dipped our toe into NC STAR at a couple different times over the past few years. So when we look at plans, we see some data still lingering there from 2016 or 2017, a couple situations probably a little bit earlier than that. So that is the intention of the plan of the state, but I know looking at it, when we transitioned to a different model and back, it can cause a little bit of confusion. So I wanted to start with that. We have been working with schools to make the transfer of data into this format. The principals understand they have until the end of the month to do that, and each school is approaching that a little bit differently. So in some plans, you'll see them fully in that state right now. In others, Their teams have started in assessing the indicators. And again, there are 12 key indicators within the platform, and identifying and creating plans from that. So they may not have gone back and updated to update the district mission and vision. That is all coming and will be completed by the end of the month. So I just wanted to lay that groundwork for you as you're taking a look at all of that. NC STAR, as we mentioned last time around, is based on research-based best practices. It's aligned with multiple assessments and systems that we have in place, including the Teacher Working Condition Survey, which is the bulk of the presentation this evening. Directly aligned with MTSS, with our professional learning communities, with the FAMS, again, Teacher Working Condition Data Points, our panorama surveys, and safety and school social emotional learning. In the next few slides, you will see the themes from the Teacher Working Condition aligned with the key indicators. So when we look at safety and managing student conduct, so when you think about one of the areas around physical altercations among students, when we look at bullying and cyberbullying, those fall under these three key indicators around instructional excellence and alignment. First and foremost, around effective classroom management. We know research shows that if teachers aren't well planned, if they're not really addressing the teaching and learning in engaging ways, students are going to disconnect, and that's when we see a lot of those incidents occur. When we look at A406, that deals with our social emotional wellness, and A416 deals with student transitions, both from grade to grade and from level to level. Those middle school one-on-one pieces that we do as children are moving from elementary to middle, from middle to high, but also grade level to grade level when we look at how we transition kindergarten to first grade. So we know all of those things connect directly with student conduct and safety. Similarly, the categories around time, school leadership, teacher leadership, community involvement, and support fall under that leadership capacity, those key indicators. I'll have you take a look at that. We won't go into depth there, but schools are creating plans according to their specific feedback they received on the Teacher Working Condition Survey and looking at the trends specific to their school. When we look at teacher leadership, new teacher supports, and PD, professional learning opportunities, there are key indicators there as well. When we talk about community support and involvement, families and communities, E106 directly ties to that. Now we focus on those 12 key indicators, but NC STAR includes 130 indicators. So there are opportunities for us to dive even deeper into this. And when we think about planning and operational effectiveness, that ties directly to those key areas in the Teacher Working Condition Survey around facilities and resources. So there's an opportunity for schools to look closely, and for the LEA, for us at Orange County Schools, to look at aligned resource allocation. There's also an opportunity for us to examine the environment of the school. We saw some of the areas in specific school surveys come back talking about the cleanliness of the building, things like that. And Ms. Hauser, you referenced that, I think, at our last meeting, some of those operational efficiencies. Those can be addressed directly in NC STAR as well. I will say we are not there yet. Right now, we are focusing on those 12 key indicators, which is exactly what DPI recommends that we do. But as we build our skill set, we will be able to utilize the tool in the way it was designed toward impact and not just compliance, really being able to look deeper and identifying these other key indicators other indicators that we need to look at more closely. I know there's a lot on this slide, but I wanted to give you a sense of how school improvement plans are addressed based on that data. When we have schools, again, that are looking at those safety issues of bullying, consistent enforcement of rules, understanding of rules, some of the things that came up in our working condition surveys, you see the indicators assessed, but you also see some sample action steps and strategies identified. So schools are really looking at the needs of their specific building, their faculty, their student body, and developing an action plan based on that. Some of that may involve training on the code of conduct and educator's handbook. I know several schools have done a reset and gone through that already. It's the explicit instruction in defining bullying. Oftentimes we see situations in schools where it is an egregious, unacceptable act, but it does not fall under the definition of bullying. There's not that power imbalance. So helping our students and adults to understand that. The teaching of bully prevention strategies and reporting systems. I'm thinking about how to be the bystander syndrome, how to actively get involved and put a stop to it. Utilization of PBIS, we see in the majority of our schools. Implementation of positive referral systems. I think you get a sense of where schools can go with this. Similarly, we talked about Connie talked about professional development. Again, we see different action steps and strategies that some of our schools are putting into place. Some of that is identifying teachers to share their best practices at faculty meetings when we identify trends and needs in buildings, to have those strong teachers in those specific areas really act as teacher leaders and to develop their capacity to do so. To put simple things in place. We saw in some of our teacher working conditions surveys that teachers didn't feel that they were being asked to assess how well the professional development session went, nor were they getting responses about that. Those are easy things for us to correct. One of the pieces I alluded to and didn't go into a great deal of depth last presentation was around our LEA support and improvement team here in Orange County Schools. This is a key indicator that shows up across the board in all of our schools. This is something we assessed as not yet being in place, but we have already put this in place. And that's that we have a team of district leaders who are participating, focused specifically right now on our one school that has been designated as low performing, but expanding our reach eventually to our 4 Title I schools, to our schools at risk of falling into that low performing category, and eventually to all 13 of our schools. The job of this team is to help identify and remove barriers that exist, to identify resources and bring those resources directly to the schools, be it material resources, human capital, additional training, professional development from our CNI team. It's also being that critical friend and critical lens. So helping to assure that the root causes that our schools have identified are truly the right root causes, that we are really looking at that data, that we're monitoring the fidelity of implementation of pieces, all of those things. And I can say that is already in place again at one of our schools. I have rushed through that, but it's because we have 13 important people who want to be able to answer your questions. And 2 of them are in the room. The rest are all online, but I would love to start with answering questions I can, and I believe they are available in our Zoom link. I don't know if that is live yet, but I'm going to assume it is, but I'll let you jump in with any questions you have.
Sarah?
Great. Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you, principals, for being here. Happy Principal Month. I think my questions are mostly for you, Ms. Carr, because they're just mostly around the NC STAR system and what we can sort of expect ultimately. Because I know they're in sort of different places right now. So like there is a page called Goals and Performance Measurement. Is that where we will eventually find like, this is the 5-year, for some schools I see it, right? Like this is where we're heading and this is our goal for each year and here's our target, here's our actuals. Is that, we're gonna see that there?
Absolutely. So it's broken down into goals and then performance targets and measures. And you can add as many years of measurement as you want to.
Yep.
So absolutely. For the most part, they've maintained the goals that existed last year, updating if they exceeded the goal or if there was a need according to their teacher working condition survey and other data that came in. But yes, you will see that. What was added to Simbly were the comprehensive reports. However, I want to offer some office hours to all of you. if it would be helpful to learn how to navigate NC Star, because you do have guest login. And one of the things that's so wonderful about it is that it offers real-time transparency. So you will be able to view the school's progress toward each of those goals and the action steps. So I'm happy to set that up. And I think even in having those sessions both live and virtually for principals early on and assistant principals has been very helpful. It's one thing to go and get training at the state level in a room with 5 other districts and thousands of people, but it's another to be able to really have your questions answered. So we can set that up.
That is great. I would love that. I was on a school improvement team when the district started using, at least one of the times, started using NC Star, maybe in 2016, somewhere around there. And we used it for a while, at least to put the school improvement plans in. I'm not sure how, like whether everyone was updating them with fidelity or anything like that, but we never got this sort of guest access.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, I don't think we've made that available to families either. And so I think I can see that at least one school that I'm in right now has their meeting minutes from last year. Actually, they were using it last year, has their meeting minutes in here. And so if this is the one source that like people in the public and us can go to see what is the improvement happening in the school improvement plan, I think that's a really big opportunity for us to get clearer together.
Yep. Thank you.
Can you just explain, because there's so many different frameworks that we're working with. There's the school improvement plans, and there was last year's plans. Are you saying the goals are going to be consistent? There's initiatives from the district like the SEL and the literacy curriculum, and then we have real challenges around the behavior, code of conduct, discipline, underperforming student groups, under-challenged student groups. So how do the pieces actually fit together?
Absolutely. Ultimately, they will all fit together here. There's an initial really heavy lift in assessing all of those indicators and building the plan. But it is based on a continuous improvement model. So it continues to grow. We continue to monitor and look at the impact it's having over time. So through all of those indicators, all of those pieces that you've mentioned, our new curriculum, our new reading curriculum, SEL, MTSS, PLCs, all of those really are embedded within the school improvement plan. So within those key indicators, there's one that was specific to SEL. So we are looking at that, and schools are identifying the training they've gone through, what that looks like, the implementation of lessons each week or each month, and tailoring it to where their school is. Some of our schools have been doing and engaging in some SEL work already. So no one has been told to throw that out. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's let's look at what you're doing. And as Dr. Dreyer and Mr. Williams come in and are working with our schools on that, it's looking at how we weave that and marry it together. So again, that'll look a little bit different at each specific school. Is that helping to clarify? You still have some questions?
Well, kind of, and just, are the schools empowered to come to us and say, if we want to see these outcomes, we need to have, different resources allocated to our schools?
So that's part of that LEA, our school support and improvement, our district, improvement team. So they can come to us, but we will also be coming to them. Today I sat in the school improvement team meeting with Dr. Green at Gravelly Hill, with 2 parents, with just an incredible group of educators. And they talked through all of those pieces. It was such rich conversation, and looking at what they needed to do to provide enrichment, and looking at what they needed to do to fill in some of the gaps, and really wanting to assure that they have crafted a vision of what each objective looks like when it's at full implementation. And I talk about full implementation as being the place where they are an exemplar in the district, they're an exemplar in the state, and they can't wait to bring other people in to see the great work they're doing. So it's thinking through, what does that look like? We're at the initial stages with MTSS, but we've got best practices. And built into NC Star are what they call WISE ways that Ms. Smiley referred to the last board meeting. And those are research-based practices that help them to identify what strong MTSS structures look like. So there's a lot There are a lot of resources embedded within it. There is a lot of potential within it, but there is this heavy lift. Once we get through this heavy lift and everybody has those plans initially put into NC STAR, then when we can start going deeper and we start seeing how the tool helps us to move schools forward and help them to move students forward.
Can I, one more? Well, can I ask this? So just to take what you just said as an example, MTSS, there are wide disparities in our schools in terms of their readiness on MTSS. And so will their plans include the actions they need to do to develop MTSS capabilities within the school?
Absolutely. All of their plans will look different with the exception of the one district key indicator, which is the key indicator I've written for all of them because that's about the team we have developed and are developing to help support all of the schools. Other than that, their plans are all individualized and personalized to meet the needs of their specific school communities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to thank you and applaud you because when I left Orange County Schools, before I left Orange County Schools, NC STAR was introduced. I thought it was fantastic. My staff thought it was fantastic. I don't know what happened between 2018 and now. I do know that when I was at Orange for a year, we were using it there as well. But I think the potential for this is so much better than the old school improvement plans where you just rushed and you put down something and you moved on. This really lets you dive deeper. It lets you, it's sort of in your face all the time.
It is.
And that's what is needed because school improvement plans were done because they had to be done. You had to bring them to the board. You had to have them signed off on. You had to do all that stuff. And then they just sort of got
Put on
pushed
the
over
shelf.
here. But this is letting you go deeper. And so I appreciate what I'm hearing that you're doing with the schools because I think it needs somebody that can continue. This is a continuous thing. It's not something that we just do and put aside. And I think that what you're saying is that you are working to make it that continuous document that is going to show improvement. That's the goal, is to show improvement in all that we're doing. And so I thank you and applaud you for what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Sarah?
I second that and the gratitude. And I wrote down when you said this is about impact, not compliance, because I think there can also be a world where you see this computer system and you're like, okay, what do we need to put in these boxes so that we can be done with this? Or put things that are like, well, what are the things we do that help with family engagement? Well, we do weekly news. Our teachers send home weekly newsletter. It's the things it's the activities you're doing. It's not the what are we doing differently to improve?
To impact.
And I think in the past, school improvement plans in the district have been of both varieties. There's sort of been a range in strength, but I think your team, cabinet folks, whoever, central office folks, and you in particular, coming in, like sitting alongside with people and like sitting with multiple schools can sort of be a critical friend and sort of help folks not get a message from the central office that it's just a fill in the boxes activity, but a real tool.
And I don't want to discount how heavy the lift is initially. Principals are working really hard on this. Their teams are working really hard on this. And I know when I first encountered it, it didn't fit within my own personal box for what school improvement plans looked like. Like Ms. Purcell, I had that binder those early years. I'm not proud of it, but I've admitted to every principal here, my early years, that's what it looked like. And it wasn't until I was working with DPI and coaching schools that I fell in love with it as a tool because I saw the potential, I saw the impact it was having. And I've told them all, I know it's painful right now and change is hard, but you're going to fall in love with it. I have that confidence that we're moving in that direction and that everyone will embrace it. We've just got to get through these few pain points early on.
The potential is there.
It truly is.
For a great document, working document.
a living, right? A living, breathing, yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions from any board members? I just had one.
Please.
As I looked through all the schools, there's a retention and recruitment. It looked like all the schools really focused on the recruitment, but I didn't see anything on the retention. And I was curious how we can get some focus on that and really look at the culture climate, right? That gets really to that. And, you know, really great detail, as everybody said. But when I saw those, I was like, wow, that's an area that we really need some focus on. So how do we get to that level to get in these plans, kind of that level of what do we do for that retention part, right?
Sure.
The recruiting, we've got lots of great stuff going on, but the retention, I think, is where we can really make an impact if we could figure out in each school what that would look like, because I know they're going to be different. I know there's different challenges and different things that can be done, but that was an area to me that I saw that, hey, if we could get some focus on that, that would be great.
So often, our school principals are so incredibly strategic that they often don't realize what they are doing is a strategy. And some sitting by their side, as Ms. Smiley referenced, is part of that coaching to help them understand that this is a real strategy. Not everybody is doing this. This is special to your school, and this is what has you in the space that you're in. I was at an elementary school the other day and sat in on their school improvement team meeting and left feeling so empowered and so proud of that community, and watching the distributed leadership that was going on, watching people who are doing really tough work, but really love that work. And the follow-up conversation with that principal this week will be, talk to me about how you got to that place, because it's clear they're doing some hard work. They're dealing with children living in trauma. There are some daily experiences with some students dealing with some high-level needs, and yet they're all doing it with a smile. They're loving that, and they're continuing the work. So the way that they were reporting out in each of the key areas, thinking about each of these indicators, was brilliant. It was amazing, but I don't think that they had the time, frankly, to stop and reflect and say, oh yeah, we did this, and this to get to that point. So to your point, Mr. Atherton, I think it's helping each of them to process, and the teams to process, how things got to where they are. In my prior, I was doing some coaching with some schools in Los Angeles, and when I'd speak virtually to their early teams on early literacy initiatives, we talk about what, they'd set their SMART goals for a 10-week period. They'd ultimately reach their goals. And when I said, well, what happened? What did you do? Well, we taught, they were just great kids. It just happened. They're in front of me. They're, they're back in school now. They're no longer on the computer. And I'd have to say, that's all well and good, but the students up the street are back in school, sitting in those classrooms. They're not getting the same results you are. So really helping people to walk it back to see what those steps are, and that level of intentionality that as educators, when we're told repeatedly, we are superheroes. And I truly believe that, but I think it also breeds a sense of, well, we're doing what we do. This is what we always do, without being able to walk it back and name that. And I think that's what great educators can do. They can name their intentional practices that lead to success that can then be replicated in other places.
So we can have some retention at it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I went down that rabbit
That's
hole.
okay.
Mr. Atherton.
I'm glad you added
thinking
some
about that,
background
yes,
to
but
it.
when we
so.
I started thinking about that school I was visiting. Thank you for bringing me back. It's been a long day. But they're doing that. So I think about the affinity groups that are going to be formed. I think about this particular school and how they socialize as well. I think about how they support each other. They just haven't named those things for retention. When we listened to some of our beginning teacher of the year at Grady Brown and why she wanted to come back, It's those things that they're doing at Grady Brown that are the retention efforts. But I would bet that Mr. Marks hasn't thought to list those yet. So, again, just taking the time to reflect and identify. So yes, thank you for pulling me back.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's one of the board's highest priorities is the school culture and climate. So us seeing or being able to look and understand what they're doing really helps us understand, how those are changing underneath. And that's a great example that you can.
Well, and they'll continue to get feedback on the plan. So even if you're not seeing it right now, there's an opportunity within the plan for them to continue to get coaching feedback as well from district staff, from state staff as well. So those are things we'll be looking back at and encouraging them to really name.
Fantastic, thank you. The only other one I had was the NC Star, and you had mentioned office hours. I think that's fantastic. It would be very helpful if we had a training.
Yeah.
And we could watch that first and then come in, and that way we're all at kind of a level to say, here's kind of the questions we have. But I was just thinking of that because last time all of the school improvement were videoed, and it was so helpful because you could go back and look at it and figure out what's going on. So
Sure, I'll work with Franklin. We'll set that up. Absolutely.
fantastic, thank you. Anything else?
Can I say one more thing? I think that the culture and the climate, we're going to see an improvement in culture and climate with what you're doing and with the NC Star, because it is so much, it's there, and it's not put on the shelf. It's there. And so teachers are going to see what their counterparts are doing, what their peers are doing, and they're going to talk about it more. And so I think that it can't help but have an impact on culture and climate, I don't think. I'd be surprised.
Agreed, agreed. And as you speak about respect and trust, I think it adds that as well, because we are there rolling up our sleeves and doing the work along with the school improvement teams.
And they have ownership in it.
Absolutely.
And that makes a big difference.
Connie?
Just to manage our expectations, this is really exciting. It sounds like a lot of the things that you're moving to will answer questions that we've been trying to answer about, and the district's been trying to answer about metrics and school profiles and other things. So you're going to get into the specifics. And so there's a question about what's a rough timetable that the school improvement plans will be done, and then how will the results then be reintroduced into the district strategic plan?
So it's a continuous improvement process. So I can say by month's end, the logging into all of the sites, you'll see updated data in all of the NC Star platforms for each of the 13 schools. As we continue looking strategic plan, we'll be working to assure everything is aligned there. But it is a live document. So you'll be able to watch, and I'm happy to come back and do updates on those things, but you'll be able to see the progress as key indicators are marked completed. There's an opportunity, schools need to provide evidence that they've completed those things. Those documents are housed in NC Star. They're running minutes. There are, it also, to Ms. Purcell's point, the framework of it is such that it assures that school improvement meetings remain focused on school improvement work. Oftentimes, sometimes, in the past, in my early years, it was easy to make it an operational meeting or to talk about, problems at dismissal or this going on or that going on. This really keeps the work focused on school improvement work just by the means in which it's set up. So to go back to your question, I think once we have the training, once you get comfortable with the site, I think a lot of your questions, again, will be answered and you'll be able to see those updates in real time.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I believe the next presentation is Dr. Rolick and Gravelly Hills, so we will have her come on up, and I'm going to get those slides up here for her. And I got, let's see. Would you like to click or would you like me to click?
Click,
Oh, I've got to click up here. No, you're good. Thank you for bearing with us for just a minute. And the clicker froze.
Well, good evening, Board and Dr. Felder. Thank you for this opportunity to share Gravely Hill Middle School School Improvement Plan. My name is Gwen Rolak. I'm the principal at Gravely. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about the 2021-2022 school year and some of the things that definitely contributed to our current status as a low-performing school. At our school, we did have a significant number of vacancies in some hard-to-fill positions, such as ELA and math. We know that those are also tested subject areas where we had those vacancies. We went throughout last school year without an AIG specialist. And as we look at the data for our AIG students and our highest achieving students and see that they did not grow, in fact, had negative growth, we can go back to not having that person in place as part of that. We did not have an athletic director during the school year, and I've always loved sports, and I learned last year just how important sports really are to a middle school community. Our assistant principal took on that role. We took it on together, but she definitely was the front face of athletics at Gravely, and so because of that, you can imagine that that's a lot of hours spent on things that were not completely focused on the academics, which is obviously where we want to have our focus. We also went without an EC separate setting teacher for our students who are in a separate setting middle school program at Gravely. In addition to the teacher vacancies, 77% or 10 of the 13 teachers who taught a tested subject at Gravely were teaching it at Gravely for the first time. So we found some really great teachers, some new from other districts who came to Gravely. They're still there this year, so that's a plus. But last year was their first year teaching at Gravely. So even if they had taught in a previous district, they were learning all the things they needed to know about being at Gravely. We also had some teachers who were residency teachers, first year teachers, teaching in those tested subject areas. In addition to some of the vacancies, our staff provided coverage many days during the school year. And by coverage, we just mean a teacher is out due to COVID, due to a COVID-like illness, due to a family concern, or some other reason. And so the staff who did come to work that day would cover. So sometimes that meant giving up a planning period, or if you were someone like our literacy coach, you don't have a planning period, but instead of coaching teachers during that time, you would go in to teach and cover those classes where we had vacancies or absences. We sometimes had trouble finding enough substitutes. So we did have some subs who came into the building. And we were very grateful. We still are grateful for our substitute teachers, but we sometimes did not have enough of them to cover all of our classes. In addition, our teachers at Gravely teach a variable course load from year to year. So that's one challenge that I think might be unique to our school. That we don't have a true middle school teaming concept where there are, say, 4 teachers who teach, each of them teach one core content area. Our teachers from year to year may change what they teach. So this year they may teach 3 sections of science and 1 section of math. And then the next year, based on student numbers and our allotments, they may teach, 2 sciences and 2 math or something different. Sometimes teachers have also switched grade levels to accommodate for that.
I just want to add, that's a result of the size of the school and the cohort size changing from year to year. So just wanted to make sure you have that context.
And just to give thank you for that, a little bit more context so that I said it to Dr. Bennett, who was in our school today. Our 6th and 8th grade cohorts right now are like 138 students each, but our 7th grade is 170. So there are some, dramatic differences between those cohorts. The other thing that I will note here is that we even had classified vacancies last year. So some days I was the front desk secretary while we were, looking for someone to fill that role, and certainly worked with district staff. So thankful for district staff and helping with the bookkeeper vacancy. We now have those roles filled, and it has made for this school year a tremendous difference. The athletic director role is also filled, and we are very thankful for that. Because of all of these staffing issues, we know that limited our capacity as a school to do some of the work that we know how to do and the work that we want to do, and if I dare say, the work we will do this year. Because of our limited capacity, we did not always provide the highest, most effective core instruction that we wanted to because of sort of being pulled in so many different directions at different times. Again, if teachers are covering, they're not in their PLCs to plan with their colleagues. And then our academic coaches sometimes, again, we're teaching, so they weren't there to provide. I heard us talk about the professional development that teachers needed. And so we do, take a look at all of that and weigh that as we get ready to talk a little bit more about some of the specific challenges and responses that we are making to the challenges. So we did a data dig that included several pieces of data, and these data points are included in your presentation. It includes our academic performance data. So we looked at our EOG performance data from the 2022 school year, as well as historical EOG data, looked at subgroup performance data, looked at the NC check-ins. We did NC check-ins 3 times last year, so we looked back at those for reading and math and science. We also looked at our discipline data through Educator's Handbook and Power School, as well as our teacher working conditions historical degree analysis, as well as just last year's data. And in doing all of that, we came to these 5 challenges. These may not have been all of them, but definitely some of the ones that with our deep dig, we believe definitely impacted our data for last year. So core instruction, I've already mentioned that, but we want to develop proficient readers and proficient mathematicians. And we know that core instruction that is effective for at least 80% of our students is critical to being able to do that. And so we are excited at Gravely about the new Into Literature curriculum. When those materials were delivered on the first day of school, there were teachers who wanted to get right at them to start exploring the resources, and that is very exciting. And already teachers are starting to use some of those materials. We do have 2 staff members from Gravely who are on the district rollout or implementation team. And so they are right in the thick of that work and then bringing that information back to us. We also are excited about Think Circa, which we had the opportunity to start a little bit toward the end of last year. And obviously we'll be continuing this year. I know that on September 26th, there was a training for select teachers in Think Circa and how they can implement these writing across the curriculum units into their instruction. And we want our interventions to be highly effective. Math 180 and Hilber are 2 Tier 3 interventions that we are already starting to use this year. The first 5 weeks of the school year, students spent, or the first 4 weeks of the school year, students spent in advisory lessons, but starting in that 5th week, students were placed into their intervention or enrichment groups based on their performance on AIMSweb, the AIMSweb Universal Screener. And so again, having some of the resources for Math 180, for Hilber, early in the year will, I know, make a tremendous difference in how we're able to support our students and their growth. Progress monitoring implementation with Fidelity. One of the things that I've been wanting and I'm very excited about is the Branching Minds platform. We have just been introduced to that this year. This is a platform that will allow us to really monitor our MTSS implementation data. So when students took, for example, the AIMSweb Universal Screener, that data is already uploaded into Branching Minds. And so we can look to see if students are at Tier 2, if they're at Tier 3, and we'll be able to do our progress monitoring within the system to ensure that we are growing students. The NC check-ins data, we will continue to use that data. We do know, though, that the NC check-ins data, at least for us, matched really well with our math scores on the EOGs, but it did not align very well with our reading EOG performance. And so we want to intensify the utilization of CFAs or common formative assessments. What we're doing right now is teachers are creating the CFAs as a team, implementing those, and then providing next day interventions or enrichments for students based on how they've performed on those CFAs. We also want to prioritize student engagement. As we've talked about before, if students are disengaged, then we may have, discipline concerns and also just not high-level learning. And so last year, at the very end of the year, in the 4th quarter, we did start administrator roundtables with a select group of students. We intend to continue those this year with quarterly administrator roundtables with our students across all 3 grade levels. And we also last year talked about establishing a student equity team, and that work is underway as well for this year. In developing our plan, we took a look at the root cause analysis. And we met as a team just to review, again, a lot of data, and we tried to dig as deeply as we could, and we tried to be very transparent. So where we were not in place to do some of the work that was called for, we were very honest with ourselves about that. And even though we look at a lot of those challenges and they're listed there in terms of differentiated professional development, which I've also heard mentioned tonight, we have teachers who are brand new to teaching and teachers who have been teaching for a long time, and they often need different professional development. And then they need us to follow follow up on that professional development. Of course, I mentioned historical EOG results and looking at those and seeing that over the years, looking back to 2013, most years Gravely underperformed the other two middle schools. So wanting to try to dig into that data and figure out, what's going on and what can we do this year to, try to start to turn that tide. What is working, I'm really excited that when I looked at the teacher working condition survey data, we had high agreement. I think it was 89 or greater percent agreement that the staff have a shared vision. We rewrote our vision statement last year as a whole school community, and we do live into that vision each day when we come in to do the work, and even after work. Our teacher working conditions survey data also showed that our school has a group process for solving problems, that we confront problems head on and then work together to solve those problems. I also just wanted to note that our attendance rate improved. So it improved from 91% to 93%. And of course, we're wanting to get it to 95%, but I just like seeing that it is on that upward trajectory. And so the addressing challenges, some of this you've heard this evening, greater MTSS fidelity. I do believe, as I said before, that the Branching Minds platform will help with that. We want to strengthen our PLCs, and so I'm grateful that we have partnered as a district with Solution Tree, and we've already had some on-site coaching with one of the Solution Tree associates to look at our PLC, see what's working, but also see where can we grow and improve. And then the intensification of CFA use is going to be a key way that we address these challenges. The NC STAR platform, we've already entered most of our plan into NC STAR. As we've said, it is a living, breathing document, so we continue to update it. We met today as a team and did some additional work on it, and there is still some work to do. The Wise Ways process definitely offers some research-based strategies that we have incorporated into our plan in NC STAR, and that we believe will make a big difference for us this year. So on the next 4 slides, I've listed 4 of the key indicators. As Ms. Carr said, there are 12 key indicators. NCDPI recommends that you choose 3 to 5 to focus on, knowing that if we focus on all 12, we probably will not be able to see the results that we want to see in a single year. And so for this year, we are going to focus on 4 key indicators. We noted within our teacher working conditions survey data, as well as within our educator's handbook data that's related to A 4.06, that our students had challenges around physical conflicts, bullying and cyberbullying. And so when we take a look at some of the things that we can do, we know that SEL, social emotional learning, and meeting those needs of students is a key thing that we need to focus on. And so this year we will be training teachers in the Rethink Ed SEL curriculum. There's already a group of subject matter experts who have received training, and they are starting this month in October to train the rest of our staff. And then we will begin to implement 2 Rethink Ed SEL lessons per month with all of our students. For key indicator B 1.03, I'd just like to highlight here the district support and monitoring team. Very thankful for Ms. Carr and all the work that she and others throughout the district are doing to really support the work that's going on at Gravely. This will ensure, as she just mentioned, that how our plan will be monitored for impact. At the school level, these indicators, our action steps are embedded into the assess, create, monitor cycle. We use the action reports at each of our SILT meetings so that we can closely progress monitor our action steps for our prioritized indicators toward achieving our goals. And then at the district level, B 1.01 is that the LEA has this support and improvement team. And Ms. Carr and Dr. Green, who were there with us today, as well as other members of CNI, have been added to our school improvement team. You'll see that in the NC STAR platform. And based on what we are discussing at each meeting, different members of CNI would be available to support the work that we're doing.
And beyond CNI, if we recognize, I'm sorry.
No.
If we recognize a barrier that lives in facilities or that lives in the equity department, those folks will be invited to the meeting as well. So it's certainly not just CNI, but extends beyond that. I also just wanted to add, although you see a few action steps for each of these areas, the design of NC STAR is that after those action steps are completed, that the team take a look and say, well, okay, we've done this. Have we done it with fidelity? What impact is it having? Has it brought us to full implementation? If it has not, then we're going back and looking at what additional actions need to be taken. So it may be, and DPI states that to have a plan, it just constitutes having one action step. You'll see more than one action step in all of these areas for Gravelly Hill, but wanted to give some context there as well.
Thank you. On C 2.01, thank you. No, thank you. Just want to highlight a couple of action steps here. The first one around core content PLCs, particularly math, ELA, 8th grade science, developing those common formative assessments and then using those results immediately. So today, in sitting in a 6th grade math PLC, and Ms. Carr actually was there for part of this, we had our electronic data wall up, looking at individual students to see, that, if they were read on, two of the last two CFAs, and, being able to just dig in and talk about what do we need to do for those students, looking at students' designation if they're AIG or EC, and looking at how their data is showing up on those CFAs. And we do believe that with this work that's already underway, including the data walls, the electronic data walls to display student performance on standards, that we're going to see greater growth as well as proficiency for our students as we focus. One of the things that I've really enjoyed is that in doing this on the front end, more so than on the back end, so to speak, is that when we're making our unit plans, we're going ahead and deciding, based on how students perform on this CFA, this is what their intervention will be. This is what their enrichment will be. So those plans are already there, and teachers are not having to figure that out the day after the students have taken the assessment. And then PLCs will track individual student data via the physical or electronic data walls. Right now, we're thinking electronic data walls. If you know me, you know I'm not a fan of much paper, and so we've opted for the electronic data walls right now at Gravelly. And then E 1.06, which is vital to everything we do. I was so excited to have 2 of our 3 parent members of our SIL at the meeting today. Yes, their voice, their feedback has been tremendous. Their support for the school has been tremendous. And so one of the things that I just wanted to highlight from this slide is that the staff will plan and host quarterly academic events. I know here we call them like academic parent nights, but they might not all be at night. They might be during the day, such as the one that we just did last month, which was called the Personal Narrative Palooza, where 6th graders who had written a personal narrative shared their narrative. Actually, 6th graders read it out loud to their parents who came to the school. We met in the media center, and students were able to share their work. Parents were able to hear that work, but then also engage in some discussion with students. They had a protocol around the types of questions to ask and really get the students to talk a little bit more about theme and the writing process. And so we want to continue that work, which is already underway. I know that in December, we'll have an AIG information night for families. And then throughout the year, we will ensure that we have at least one quarterly opportunity for our families to either be at the school or be on Zoom or whatever is convenient for them to know more about how they can continue to support their children's learning. The implementation timeline, of course, some things are already underway now. Professional development has been really huge here at the beginning of this year. I've heard us say that we have lots of newness in the district. So NC STAR, while not new, is new to some of us in terms of using it with fidelity. Rethink Ed, the new SEL curriculum, again, we've had some professional development there, and that's ongoing in this month of October. Into Literature, the district rollout plan is being developed. And we anticipate that beginning in January that we will be fully rolling out Into Literature. Again, some teachers are already using some of those resources. Think Circa is already well underway. PLC capacity building with on-site coaching. We had a coaching event today, which was very successful, and looking forward to that continued work. And then Branching Minds, there's ongoing professional development around the MTSS process and the use of this platform for progress monitoring our implementation of MTSS. By December. And so in the next several areas, I've just highlighted a few points. Of course, if you have the comprehensive report, there are several additional action items within this implementation timeline. But just wanted to highlight again the implementation of the Rethink Ed SEL lessons, utilizing Branching Minds, updating our data wall. So that is ongoing with each CFA to continue to update that and then host those academic focused family events. By March of 2023, participate in recruitment events with human capital. Those invitations have already been extended to principals to join and try to recruit for teachers to our schools and then administer and use results from a school-based TWC survey. So we know that the TWC is every 2 years, and so on the off year at Gravely, we always administer our own just in-house TWC survey to assess that culture and climate in the building and then use those results to respond. By the end of the year, June 2023, we want to make sure that we're sharing transition plans with families. That work is happening. So when students are about to go from 8th to 9th grade, we're meeting with those students. The counselors are meeting with them. They're developing plans around registering for courses, what it's like to be a high school student. But we want to make sure that families also have access to those plans and understand how they can support their students. And then I know that the district support team will be providing another round of feedback on our implementation of our NC STAR school improvement plan. And so we'll want to be responsive to that feedback. Tonight, I do want to say that because of our team's meeting today and taking a look at some of our action steps, what we've requested is that tonight's information be shared for discussion and information. And then in 2 weeks, once our team has had a chance to do some additional tweaks, that this would be presented back for action and approval. Are there questions? Oh, go ahead.
That's okay. And from there, once it is presented for approval and you approve, we then have 5 days to turn around and submit to the State Department of Public Instruction. And then it comes back after we receive feedback from them to you for final approval.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions? Sarah?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Roloff, for that. That was very thoughtful. Like, it's a very thoughtful process, and excited to see the final version that comes forward. I have a question. It sort of started from the thinking about student engagement and how, as I think we all know, that can look really different room to room. Like the individual class, the success in a classroom at engaging students can vary. And so I was curious how you all are thinking about tackling that, as in addition to sort of the school-wide, the SEL curriculum and the student advisory group that you talked about.
Yes, we have talked about that quite a bit. I think inviting the student voices, like elevating those voices, is going to be one big piece of that. One of the things that I learned last year from students is that they want to have more of a voice in what the school day looks like and how we make decisions in the building. And so that student equity team, as well as the administrator roundtables, will give us a chance to hear from students and then respond to what they share with us. We also this year have utilized some NCVPS courses to provide some consistency of instructional resources in places where we have vacancies, versus having like a different sub who might pick up a job here or there, and the students not being able to have sort of that consistent presence. And we've also been thankful to Human Capital, who's helped us secure long-term subs in those positions, so that again, there's some consistency, because you're right, if students don't feel that consistency, then that's going to lead quickly to disengagement. So those are some of the ways that we intend to get at what students most need. We also have placed everyone throughout the building on just their various duty spots, and we continue to just really highlight, please, be at your doors, please, greet the students, so that we can discourage, just by our presence, maybe being disengaged or being, off task. So those are some of the ways that we're trying to get at it initially.
I think something Dr. Roloff mentioned a little while ago too, in terms of their planning, is going to have a huge impact there. When I sat in with the 6th grade math PLC today, and they talked about and looked at the interventions as well as the enrichment activities for specific students, again, it struck me, especially for those higher achieving students, that those enrichments are already, every one of us at the team went, wow, how, and then I had to ask, how many of those kids achieving at those 4 and 5 levels are going to be able to do that with mastery? And teachers were able to answer that, and they were incredibly challenging opportunities to extend their learning. The other piece I'm not sure if you're aware of, if you don't spend time at Gravely Hill, is that this incredible leader and her assistant principal are never in their office. They both utilize their carts. They're in the hallway. They are out in classrooms all day, every day. I've never found either one of them in their office. So that's another way I think that gets at the pieces around that TWC piece around safety, and just assuring everybody is where they're supposed to be. And it also gets at being able to get to know the students, build relationships, and address that social emotional piece. And I've watched her, and her counseling background is incredible and really has a tremendous impact. The students are fortunate to have her.
I've seen that too.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dr. Rolak. As you know, I'm a big fan, probably the president of the Dr. Rolak fan club. And I've done lunch duty and garbage pickup and all kinds of things at the school. So, and I really, really appreciate what you've shared today. So I'm going to ask questions, and I apologize if they're ignorant because I'm not an educator. When you started, you talked about some challenges with new teachers, junior teachers, and also that you're not using a traditional block schedule of middle school because of your size. And I know lunch duty, having covered lunch duty, that's an issue. And I was just curious, so that's one set of questions, but I'm curious if we should do more to provide some resources in the school to provide better coverage so the teachers have more planning time. And I would add, because you're putting in such a big lift around PLCs, there's a training for the new reading curriculum that I understand is an issue that, we have to find time for that. So should we be throwing some additional resources and maybe some experienced resources in the building to help as some of the activity happens around development? And then the second part is kind of a similar question around the behavioral side, is do you need additional help from a social worker or a counselor perspective to help with bullying? You said bullying and cyberbullying in the school. So are there ways we can help you bring this team along under your leadership?
Before you answer, board, we will need an extension to continue.
How much time do we need?
So the thought is we will move the board items to the retreat, and there's one more item on the agenda.
There's one additional item, and that would be the federal programs position.
20 minutes? 20 minutes? Motion to extend the meeting by 20 minutes.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, please continue.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Hauser. I will say that we are in talks about the types of supports that would really help us at Gravely. We do have two amazing counselors and an amazing social worker, but the needs are great. And so I don't think any principal would say, no, we don't need any additional support. I do really value working with the team, and we're having that conversation. That in team includes people from central office as well as people at Gravely, so that when we do ask for what we need, that it is intentional and that it's grounded in our data, and that there has been some full team discussion. But yes, we are talking about that right now. Like, what are the additional supports that would really help us meet the goals that we've set for ourselves?
Good. Yeah, we're anxious to hear that. All right.
Yes.
Be anxious to hear that.
Carrie?
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Rulak, and I'm so impressed by your energy, which is apparent tonight, as well as when I visited your building as well. And I didn't realize how many challenges you all were overcoming with. I knew about the vacancies, but like, for example, do you have the AIG specialist for this school year? Is that position in place now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. You mentioned that you had the athletic director, and I know you had gone to like every game last year. So I'm glad you have that as well. And I know another position just recently got filled, a core classroom position. So thank you.
Yes, and that is tremendous. I will just give a quick shout out to our AIG specialist being in an ELA PLC today. And again, just having that person there to say, well, that assessment might actually not be rigorous enough for some of your kids. And immediately she was able to, go to some resources and pull something up, pop it up on the screen for us so that we could in real time talk about it and, continue to revise these assessments to make sure that our students are being pushed. So we are very thankful that we have that AIG specialist position filled.
I was just curious how a couple of things that you mentioned as pain points last year, a couple of the others. One was around like coaches actually being able to spend time coaching, and then just around, you may not have mentioned it, like around planning time, like having sufficient planning time that came up in teacher working conditions. How are both of those looking right now? Because I think both of those could make a really big difference.
Yeah, so last year, so this year we modified our master schedule. At the end of last year, like I'd heard the comments from staff about like what was challenging about the master schedule we had last year. They did have some teachers teaching both, say, 7th and 8th grade, which meant they had multiple PLCs to attend, but also that their times did not perfectly align. And so we met as a committee. It opened up to the whole school, and there were about 8 folks who wanted to be on the master schedule committee. We met and we developed a master schedule so that folks are teaching just the 1 grade level. We also ensured that even our electives teachers are getting the same amount of planning time during the day as our core teachers. That meant, adjusting some times for classes, but it has really worked. And I've sought feedback from several staff members this year, and every single time it has been, this schedule works. The waterfall schedule piece that we're doing is still, folks are still getting a little bit used to that, but I've heard some folks say they really like that as well. So we have tried to look at how we've structured time in our building to get at that.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you.
All right, other questions? Comments?
I just like to say thank you. Because
you.
your vision and your energy are perfect. And you're in a middle school. What more can I say?
Enough said.
So I understand and I appreciate all that you're doing, and
thank you.
Want to come up and talk with you.
So I just have one question, and I'll just echo everybody about your energy and just your engagement. Really appreciate it. I do know we had to start classes virtual, and that's a different type of challenge. As you're developing this plan, ideally it would not to be in that situation, but if we are in that situation, have to continue that, what are some of the thoughts around those specific cases? Because now the core is not really in our hands, it's external, and how do you do the identification if you have a substitute in there? And so just curious around that challenge that you have that's kind of unique.
It is unique, and I'm again thankful to our amazing district staff. I probably shouldn't call out any names up here, but she knows who she is, who has been at Gravely many a day. I realize that means that she's sacrificing some time to be there, but to provide many lessons and targeted supports and instruction for students. Our digital learning coach, who has also been in the classrooms on almost a daily basis since the beginning of the school year to provide some of those additional supports for students. We have also been in regular contact with the NCVPS teachers, and they have been pretty amazing as well in terms of changing the way they would typically deliver instruction. Even had one teacher who said, let me do a live session with the students. And so while that is not typical, that has happened. And so we continue to talk and plan around, okay, how do we make this work if we are looking at using this long term? We hope that we're not, that maybe, sooner rather than later, we're able to have like a real, a teacher who is live in there with the students. But we are working it to the best of our ability at this point, and that's with some district support as well as support from the NCVPS teachers in restructuring how we can do things. We're also providing additional supplemental work for students. So we do have some, high achievers who finish, the work that's been assigned through the NCVPS course. And so, our district staff as well as school-based staff have provided additional practice or extensions work for those students to make sure that they continue to learn. We also have our students, about 60 students who are our highest achievers in math right now, who are in a Grizzly Growth, which is our intervention and enrichment block, with certified math teachers. And so those teachers and I have worked together around, okay, we know you've got to teach all the 8th grade standards, but this can also be some time that's used to help reinforce some of what they've learned in 7th grade while they're on the NCVPS course. So still not perfect, but definitely working toward it.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Bonnie said earlier. If there are things we can help with that to make it sustainable, until we get teachers, I'm sure we all would love to hear what we can do to facilitate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the last item for tonight, the Federal Programs Director position request.
Okay. All right, so would the team that's leading this discussion please come forward? Thank you. And I believe we hopefully still have Dr. Mayer participating virtually.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Alberton, Vice Chair Purcell, board members, and Dr. Felder. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to bring this position request back. We bought it initially on September 26th, and you all asked us to bring it back again, so we are here tonight to bring it back again. I do have some colleagues with me that will be discussing this request. I have Dr. Chris Gammon with me, who will be discussing the historical perspective and the current perspective of the position. Dr. Mayer is joining us virtually from the principal perspective and the Title I supports perspective. I will be talking about the accountability and the compliance perspective. Dr. Green will be talking about next steps, missed opportunities. And we do have Rhonda Rath joining us virtually to talk about the financial perspectives. So we're going to go ahead and get started for the sake of time and kind of move through this presentation. Dr. Gammon, will you take the podium? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher, Dr. Felder, members of the board. I do know we're short on time, so I will go as quickly as I can, but I'm very passionate about this, and I want to make sure that I hit all of these points. Thank you all so much for your willingness to bring this back up this evening for us to revisit. Prior to the pandemic, the federal program's responsibilities in Orange County schools were handled by the then director of elementary schools. One reason for this decision at that time was to align their duties supporting our K-5 schools with the support of our 4 Title I schools, which are also K-5 schools. Due to various reorganizations that have occurred over several years, the elementary and secondary director positions no longer exist. Thus, the federal program's responsibilities shifted to the chief academic officer around 2017, 2018. This shift was made at that time primarily because the person in that position had prior federal programs leadership experience. So over the last 2 years, I have picked up the large majority of the federal program's responsibilities and have worked to manage and maintain the consolidated grant process, which does include Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. That said, another byproduct of the pandemic has been an explosion of additional federal funds, as you know, through ESSER, also requiring a new layer of compliance measures that extend across all of our schools, not just our Title I schools. So to be most effective, this is not a position that just anyone can shift into without extensive training and a well-organized transition plan. As you'll hear throughout the presentation, the federal programs director must be equipped to manage multi-million-dollar budgets, adhere to stringent compliance regulations, coordinate a complex stakeholder involvement process, as well as work collaboratively, across the organization to monitor and oversee each element of the various programs. This includes school, family, community outreach, data analysis, budget planning, conducting comprehensive needs assessments, writing, constantly expanding grant applications, and those details, as well as amending those over time. And that word time, I want to be very clear about that, because the time that's necessary to do all of those things at a level of excellence that we must expect impacts the wealth of other job responsibilities that span across curriculum and instruction. You've heard many of those things mentioned this evening, and those deserve the same level of time and attention as well. So I stand before you this evening to say humbly that I appreciate the opportunity to learn about the federal programs process through this, to work with our incredible Orange County Schools team, Dr. Felder, and everyone who have provided me a ton of support when needed through this. But this is one area that we cannot afford to have missteps. So we were fortunate to successfully complete this past year the most recent consolidated application review from NCDPI. They do that every 4 years. But we also learned a lot through that experience about how to improve our processes if intentional focus is placed in this space. So it's in the best interest of our schools, you, our board, and most importantly, our students and families, that we have someone that can dedicate 100% of their time to not only ensuring we meet compliance regulations and are fiscally responsible, but to also work as a partner with our entire district leadership team so that we can now mobilize and monitor these funds in a manner that will accelerate our movement toward the strategic goals that we've set out. And so lastly, one area that must be acknowledged is the impact a trained and dedicated federal programs director can have in providing support and building capacity of the principals in each of our Title I schools, who are also faced with these same enormous responsibilities to meet these federal programs guidelines while also leading their respective schools. And so we are grateful, as you heard a minute ago, to have Dr. Mayer here this evening on the call, and she's going to share her perspective on this from the principalship. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I took my camera off or put it back on mute or whatever you call it, so I hope you can see my face. If not, I hope you can hear my voice. My name is Dr. Meredith Mayer. If you do not know me, I'm the proud principal of New Hope Elementary School. Good evening to Dr. Felder and all the members of the board. Thank you to Ms. Hatcher and Dr. Gammon for inviting me to speak on behalf of this position from the principal's perspective. So I'm here with you all this evening, as Dr. Gammon and Ms. Hatcher mentioned, to provide some principal perspective for this proposal and bring it down to the school level where much of our federal funding and Title I support lands squarely. And so as you all know, Title I schools have drastically different and often exacerbated needs in comparison with non-Title I schools. So as a result, we receive an additional hundreds of thousands of dollars of federal funding that come with highly regulated compliance requirements. And so with that money comes stipulations on how to spend it, paperwork behind that, intense auditing and checks and balances to make sure that we are spending it in the right way. And principals are primarily the ones, as Dr. Gammon mentioned, charged with managing this school-based budget and the compliance that goes along with it. So right now, Orange County Schools has 4 elementary schools that are designated as Title I schools in the entire county. New Hope is one of those schools, along with Grady Brown, Eflin Cheeks, and Central Elementary School. And so I did want to note for the board that 3 of those 4 principals in our Title I designated schools are midway through their first year and or just starting their second year as building level administrators. And so there is a demonstrated need for support for new principals within the Title I and federal programming budgetary expectations, and especially in the way of balancing, understanding, and remaining compliant with the intense regulations for Title I. So I am one of those newer principals. I started here in Orange County in July of 2021. And I am extremely lucky to have had previous experience as a school-based Title I coordinator prior to coming to Orange County in my previous district. And so because I am deeply familiar with the demand of Title I compliance and the intensity that comes along with those hundreds of thousands of dollars, I wanted to share the absolute importance of a role like the one that's proposed here tonight in supporting principals with the task of managing all of those hundreds of thousands of dollars per school in federal funding each year. And so with that experience in mind, if anything, as I am advocating very hard and very passionately for this position from the principal lens, because of this very stark and present need that we are presenting upon tonight, I would like in the same breath to commend Dr. Gammon, Dr. Knapp, along with all of C&I who have helped in any capacity with Title I and federal funding management, because it is such a huge job with monumental potential legal ramifications at the school and district level. And so if I leave you with anything tonight, please, I implore you to understand the importance of guidance for principals with this money and the amount of money that we are managing, and just the demonstrated need that we have for that. So thank you. And if you have any questions about the principal perspective, I will be on to answer those.
Thank you, Dr. Mayer, for joining us and giving the principal perspective. At this time, I think we have used the words accountability and compliance quite a bit during this presentation. But I do want to note that when looking across the state of North Carolina, we do have 116 local school districts or LEAs. Out of 116 schools, school districts, we have 100 schools that have this position. This position is either called a federal programs director, either an executive director of federal programs, or if you are a larger district, it is called a chief federal programs officer. Also, I do want to note, we did attach to the abstract, the job description. Also, we did attach some documents. We did attach the Federal Programs Director Handbook, and thank you for sharing the updated version for us. That federal handbook talks about compliance, it talks about monitoring, it talks about support, as well as the Title I handbook that we also attached for references. I do want to note that with this position of federal programs director position, while it does have a lot of oversight with money, we heard that a lot this evening. We heard a lot about grants. This is not a position that is attached to our chief finance officer position. This position is a standalone position. While this position does have grant writing experience, the position is solely going after federal grants. At this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Green to come up and talk to us about next steps and missed opportunities.
Well, good evening, board members and Dr. Felder. Well, I don't think I need to say much about the importance of the federal programs position and what you've heard this evening with regard to the responsibilities and the tasks of anyone who takes on this position. What I want to talk about are missed opportunities in the absence of someone being able to do it. There's a lot of mandates, a lot of compliance, but also, as the old adage would say, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that we found out is that there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of resources, a lot of funds out there provided under the federal guidelines and the federal umbrella that we don't know about. And the reason that we don't know about it is that we don't have the time and the resources or someone who's dedicated to helping to find out about the resources. We just learned, in fact, one of our after-school colleagues heard about a federal grant program for after-school programs from another colleague to the tune of over $2 million, and applied for it. And that would have been a missed opportunity if a colleague didn't share with another colleague. And so when we think about other opportunities out there that we're missing out on, that our students can benefit from, that we can begin to address achievement gaps, we can begin to address opportunity gaps, we can begin to address a lot of areas within our school system, because eventually other funds will leave us. And we need to make sure, how are we sustaining programs and activities that we have now? And if we don't have the ability to look at and bring in other funds, those are missed opportunities for our students. So I'm going to end with that. And at this time, we're going to look at some of the financial perspectives of having a federal programs director.
So we'll need to extend. We are at time. So is there a motion to extend?
Maybe we extend 10 minutes, Dr. Felder, 15 minutes, do you think?
I can't imagine more than 10 minutes tops.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, please continue.
I'm going to be the clicker, the vanner, while we have Ms. Raff speak to some of the federal, the money part. So,
yes, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here to speak with you again in regards to this position. As you have heard our colleagues talk about, the number of the grants in this program have increased significantly over the past 5 years. And as a result, the level of funds that we are looking at has increased to as much as 12% of our total budget. The position would be funded utilizing the indirect costs that we have been able to capture from these federal grants. On an annual basis pre-COVID, we have recouped between $70,000 and $120,000. And in the last year, we were able to recoup close to $600,000 as a result of the level of the funds that are being managed in our federal programs. The intent of indirect cost is to cover those positions that are necessary for the operation of a district, but cannot be identified with a specific project, activity, or function, such as this position. It is not intended for direct cost, which can be associated directly to a specific project, activity, or function, such as teachers or teacher assistants. So that's basically all I have in regards to add to that.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp, for your presentation. At this time, we will entertain questions, but we are just coming forward with our request to ask the board to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the board to approve the Director of Federal Programs position. And at this time, we will take any questions that the board may have.
Dr. Moore?
I don't have a question per se, but thank you all for presenting. I support Dr. Felder's recommendation. I know of 51 school districts. Thank you, it's 100. I didn't know that, but I know of 51 districts with this position. I personally know of 4 executive directors for federal programs from previous work relationships. In my previous work experience with federal money, it does come with a lot of specific compliance directives. And I feel that we need someone who has the instructional, the curriculum, and financial skill set. So this position really needs to be filled with someone with that skill set. So I support it.
Bonnie?
Is Dr. Meyer still on?
She should be.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was wondering if you can help us understand. You said that in a prior life you had experience as a Title I coordinator in a school. I don't know if we have, I don't believe we have those positions in our schools, but I was wondering if you could explain what you did in that role versus what happens now at New Hope and how you work with Dr. Knapp.
Sure. So my previous district was Durham Public Schools, and in that district, their federal funding structure mirrors what Dr. Moore just explained, which is that there is underneath the chief financial or their financial officer is a director of federal funding or an executive director, I think now. I'm not sure of their current structure. And then underneath that, they have individual federal program directors. One of which is Title I program director, is very specific. Underneath that, they asked every school who is Title I designated to nominate a person with an additional stipend and an additional hourly expectation. Most often it was the assistant principal who would take charge of that Title I money and budget and work directly with the bookkeeper or treasurer at the school to meet with the Title I programming director to make any budget transfers alongside the principal and to sort of captain that process even at a school-based level, because there is so much compliance and need around the dollars that are spent. And so just for the board, if you do not know, Title I dollars can only be spent really in one of two ways. They can either go to parent and family engagement initiatives and things within that broader umbrella, or they can go directly to impacting student achievement. And so there's not any other way that we can spend that money. And so to a previous point, having someone who knows the curricular instructional value of certain programs, being able to have a partner in the research to make sure that the funding that we're selecting to purchase a specific item or a program or an initiative or to fund a certain staff member has the right justification legally within that compliance for that money is a really big job. And so that was part of my job, a primary part of my job as an assistant principal with Durham Public Schools was to be the school-based Title I coordinator.
And you have one of the largest Title I schools in the district. Do you need someone in the school with that role?
So again, like Dr. Rolak already mentioned, I would never turn down a position, right? Like ever. You keep them rolling, all right? But yes, I would love to see a structure that mirrors that eventually. I think the most immediate need, though, before we even get to that point, is to have a captain at the helm who can organize with those school-based coordinators, because right now, the way that the education tree would fall is that I would be in charge of making sure that my person was trained appropriately. Luckily, I have the training for principals who don't, or who are coming into a Title I school, or if we were to have a school that became Title I designated that hasn't been in the past, then we would need to make sure that that person had someone to learn from. And in my opinion, it should be someone separate, in alignment with this proposal, such that it wouldn't necessarily fall on the principal, because, I wear a lot of colors, but I don't look good in orange, y'all.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you for underscoring the monumental potential ramifications, the intense regulations, that there are 100 districts that have a version of this position. The gravity of this is just so high, and I thank you all for coming and sharing different pieces of that. I am heartened that the funding would come from the indirect costs from the programs, which is what indirect costs are supposed to be spent on. So, just thank you all for your work.
Carrie?
I'd just like to echo my support, and I thank you for the presentation. And some of those 15 or 16 districts that don't have this position, some of them only have like 2 and 3 and 4 schools.
Other questions?
I'd like to ask one. Sure. In looking at this, and I've already brought this up one time, but I'll bring it up again. And looking at this central office layout that you gave us, Dr. Felder, is it possible that we already have somebody in this district that could move into this position that's working in C&I and give up what they're doing there and move into this and be the person that we need, who is already familiar with the district and who knows the ins and outs of all the federal funding?
So, to my knowledge, there is no one with the expertise, as just presented tonight, that could do that work.
If we had someone like Dr. Knapp that would be a mentor and help said person, could we find somebody in this district to do that?
I'm sorry, repeat the Dr.
If
Knapp?
we had somebody like Dr. Knapp, who has done this for years, who would work and be a mentor with someone that we already had in the district, is that a possibility?
I can't think of a position that we could exchange for this position. I think every position that we have it because we need it. And that from the document that was shared, it certainly lays out how positions are acquired. And most of those positions is due to an exchange, an elimination to create another position.
Okay. Other questions? So I have one question. So I know in our abstract, it talked about the maximum state salary and then this potentially having the indirect cost from being recouped. What is the actual position salary plus benefits?
Ms. Raff, can you speak to that, please?
Yes, so like all of our other positions, it's going to rely a lot on the candidate's experience and service to determine what the actual salary is. I had provided in the abstract what the maximum was for the level of the position, which is 102,000, and the associated benefits would be 40,000. Again, that is the maximum salary scale. And again, who the individual that would be hired, where they would be placed, or how their salary would be based upon their experience. But the maximum, which was my intent of what I provided, the maximum for the position I would see would be roughly $142,000.
Mr. Averton, may I ask a clarifying question of Ms. Raff? Ms. Raff, that does include retirement, FICA benefits?
Yes, it does. The maximum on the state salary scale is $102,900, and then the associated benefits on top of that are roughly $40,000.
So, Mr. Averton, I can answer your question. I wanted her to address that piece. Because this is a district director position, we do not have a particular scale for directors, but we do have a range. That range is 75 to 90.
Excuse me. And that's before benefits?
Yes. Benefit, that would be the salary. That does not include local supplement. That's just would be the range for the base. And that would be in line with what other directors are, because we obviously want to make certain that we are staying in line and being consistent.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other, Bonnie?
I have, some of the things that have been presented suggest that part of the responsibility is training for new principals, and a big part of our bump in federal funding is due to ESSER dollars, which are something that will go away in a few years. So the question is, and we're talking about a fairly expensive position. Is it possible we have Dr. Knapp, and is it possible to use contract help to get us through the development and training and get the basics in place and then continue the way we're doing it? Or maybe go with the strategy that Ann's talking about, not only develop our principles and maybe put a stipend in our schools to help with Title I support, but then also develop somebody in the central office to do this. Because we're much smaller. I mean, even Dr. Meyer talked about Durham, they have a huge federal obligations. We're not, it's so different than us.
Dr. Felder, can you address that, please?
I'm sorry, Ms. Hauser, can you repeat the
I'm
question?
just trying to understand this from how much of this is a development process because of new principals or new staff, and the funding balloon from ESSER versus long term.
So,
Dr. Felder, if you'd like me, I can start the answer off.
That's
okay. And so that's a great question. I'm just going to speak a little bit on behalf of New Hope's data, and I'm sure that other Title I principals would be open to sharing this data as well, as it pertains to their school and the changes in their school population. So since COVID has hit, previous to COVID, New Hope's free and reduced lunch rate, which is often what Title I status is determined on for schools, was around 62%, hovered right around 62, 63% pretty consistently. This year, we have already jumped up to around 70%, and we are still collecting lunch forms. And so because our need is increasing, our federal dollars will then proportionately increase. And so you are right about ESSER dollars, to my understanding, that they're not a permanent installation, right, that we can plan around. But if we keep having demonstrated increased need among our community, then that will continue to necessitate that money. And so right now, just to give an example, New Hope receives around $250,000 every year that has to be spent every year. And that's just for New Hope Elementary School. And so it's still, I don't want to diminish the amount of money that we're talking about, or the amount of need that is still increasing in our community. And so that's just kind of a New Hope slice around that. In terms of contract work, I would say, additional to what I have already mentioned around the school-based need for training outside of kind of that contract work. Dr. Knapp has been wonderful. And Dr. Knapp, from my understanding, has been on contract work with us for this time, and there's still a demonstrated need. And so that's pretty much already in place. And Ms. Hatcher and Dr. Gimmon, you can help me out and give me the finite details on that. But that's sort of the structure that we have in place. And we still are in really intense need for that assistance.
Thank you, Dr. Mayer. And I would just add, there's, as was stated so eloquently tonight, there's the finance side of it, but there's also the programmatic portion of this work as well, not to mention the grant funds that we don't go after. And there are millions of dollars that we could potentially seek. What happened with after school was literally by happenstance. Our director, none of us knew about that. She happened to, much like we do in this business, we talk to people. And in talking with a colleague, the colleague mentioned, hey, do you know about LEAP? The LEAP grant. There's a math and science grant that we could apply for. There are other grants through the federal government. So it's beyond ESSER. It's more than just the financial side of it. Yeah, so.
Carrie?
The other concern I remember being shared last time is, as mentioned, our federal dollars have increased exponentially. And those ESSER dollars, as they're sunsetting in waves, is when the auditing comes due. And I think we would be setting ourselves up for a grave vulnerability if we're not funding the appropriate person now, who's not being trained now, but has the skills now, so that we aren't in a vulnerable position with the auditing of how we've used those dollars, which are 4 times what they were pre-COVID.
Absolutely.
And I can say it, and I'm going to speak for me and just my role with this. I think also understanding just what I've heard tonight, whether it's teacher working conditions survey that's focused on improving professional development, which will be something that I would need to intently focus on as a C&I director, and whether it is a beginning teacher mentor support program where we're focused on retaining our teachers, which is something that we've talked about tonight, which is a Title II piece that also is something that I'm working with, whether it's academically gifted, whether it's AVID, whether it's K-12 math, whether it's K-12. So, I mean, all of the things that you can think of they all need 100% attention, but this does as well. And I think that when you begin to stretch in that way, not only does this suffer, and Dr. Mayer has stressed that, but those other areas do as well. And I think that we've got to constantly be clear about that. It's important to note.
More question?
Bonnie?
Do Title I funds, how do they flow into middle and high schools?
Currently, they don't.
They don't, so it just flows into the 4 elementary schools.
Any other questions from board members? Concerns, comments?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so, let's see, Andre and the rest, okay. Opposed? Okay, 3 opposed. So motion carries. Position is.
Thank you.
All right. One last item. We have the board priorities and goals. Can we get that tabled to the retreat?
Does there need to be a motion for that?
We approved the
Okay,
agenda,
I
so.
move to move those topics to the retreat.
We have a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you all.